Thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You are Scott Baker.
I am.
You are, I think of you as, first and foremost, director. I think I worked with you on set for the first time. You were in the director chair, I believe. But you also do steadicam work and DP, director of photography. Okay. Is there anything else on top of that you like that you consider yourself?
Edit, write. I dabble in acting when there's something, a little bit of everything.
You dabble in acting when there's something? Oh, yes. Yes, I have seen your posts about, because, for fun stuff, right?
Yeah, I guess if you want to start into like my journey into filmmaking.
Sure.
Yeah, when I was a wee lad, I wanted to be an actor, and so I was in school plays and church plays and community theater and things like that. And then when I got my hands on a video camera, got together with my friends in like junior high, high school, and started just making little videos because I wanted to act in them. And then along the process of doing that, it was like I became a writer and a director and a cinematographer and an editor because I was learning all those things so that I could use the camera and make these little short skits and stuff like that to act in, and then kind of started to more fall in love with that aspect of the filmmaking process.
So when you say wee lad,
yeah,
how old are you talking here?
I try to think of. I was in school plays, like in elementary school, like third grade. Starting in that. So that's what 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, something like that. I started doing like school plays and church plays, and we had like the Christmas nativity play and stuff like that, and getting like the step up from the background shepherd to the innkeeper that has to turn Mary and Joseph away and things like that. I'm like, all right, this is my big break.
Right.
I get a line,
But and then when did the cameras come into play then? Because that's the acting side.
Yeah.
Of at least the.
Yeah. So I want to say, how old was I? My dad had a VHS camera that I got to play around with, and that would have been like, I think it was like the summer between junior high and high school, like the summer before my 9th grade was when I started to play around with that. I started doing like little stop motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like the bridge between middle school and high school kind of thing.
Yeah, because actually in 8th grade, I think it was, I had I took a video class, and it was like stop motion animation and stuff like that. And so I started to fool around with that sort of thing, and then I said, got access to my dad's camera and started kind of making my own stuff, and then met my buddy Phil, and we started making stupid stuff because he wanted to be like a makeup effects artist because he loved horror movies and stuff like that. So that was like a perfect match because it's like he wanted to, let's do something where you get your finger chopped off and I'll do the makeup and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. So I want to jump around a little bit.
Sure.
Here.
Yep.
So that's wee lad Scott.
Yeah.
The Scott, when I first met you or like even saw you and you were talking at the table, which was that like
filmmaker networking
group. You had just come out of making Fifth Passenger and releasing that, and you had the flyers you're handing out and all that kind of stuff, and you. Okay, yes, there's Fifth Passenger. That's how first and foremost how I see you. It's like, all right, he's a sci-fi guy.
Yes.
And the Star Trek, all the Star Trek actors, and we can talk about all that kind of cool stuff too. And then you were always open to your thing. You would mention is you crowdfunded for to make that movie, and you're always open about like, all right, if anybody wants to like pick my brain and learn some stuff, grab coffee, whatever, that kind of thing. And so you helped me through my process for my movie, which is coming soon. Dates TBD.
Yeah, to a theater near you.
No theaters, unfortunately. But regardless, all right, Fifth Passenger. That was your most recent big project.
Yeah.
I don't know is there anything to talk about with what's coming next, or what you're working on now, or what the Scott Baker of today is?
Sure. Yeah. Sitting in my room drinking coffee. The Scott Baker of today. So actually, right now I am in the middle of production on a short horror film called Flicker that is part of an anthology. One of these ones where they take like 10 short horror films and smash them together and release it as a feature. So because of Fifth Passenger, one of the producers of this project liked my directing and approached me with this script for this one and asked me to direct it with a rather modest budget. But it's horror, and it's a it's a small piece that's it's contained, but. So I'm in the middle right now. We shot one day on it. It's interesting because I think there's definitely restraints that we've all had to deal with because of COVID and things like that. And one of the things that we're dealing with is crew size and the exposure to people and things like that. And so it's almost a kind of almost a benefit in a way to like indie filmmakers, because you can put together a small crew and work and almost use that as an excuse to say, okay, we're going to do this on a skeleton crew with very few people. So on this particular project, I'm directing and I'm also the cinematographer on it, which I normally wouldn't ever do on a project. If it's something just kind of like fooling around making a sketch for YouTube or something like that, I might. But for something like this, is like it has distribution and trying to do everything legit. It's we're just in this unique world where now we got to see how small can we put a crew together, how few people can we have in a room to shoot a project, and so. Yeah, so that's what I'm currently involved in as far as directing goes. We've got a couple more days to shoot on that. I'm pretty excited about it. It's a fun little I want to say like a Jacob's Ladder kind of story, Twilight Zone kind of horror, which is like totally my jam. And that's like as a kid growing up, watched a lot of Twilight Zone and Star Trek and things like that, and that's kind of like what's like shaped my mind as far as like my voice in filmmaking and things like that is definitely the Twilight Zone kind of stuff, where you're sometimes sci-fi, you're sometimes horror, sometimes it's fantasy, but it's all about dealing with ethical and moral problems, the human condition, people dealing with their own mortality, those kind of things, where the sci-fi, horror, fantasy elements are sort of cover for that philosophical discussion that you're having, and that's to me is what has sort of intrigued me along my journey as a filmmaker, and is bringing those things in. And it's not just like, oh, we're trying to scare you, or oh, we're having spaceships and aliens for the laser guns and the fights and all that's fun. But to me, that's sort of the window dressing for having the conversations. I like to read a lot, and I feel like when you're reading a novel, it's like you're having a discussion with the author, and I feel film should kind of be that same way, where the filmmaker is having a discussion with the audience where they're posing questions and they're making statements for you to evaluate and sort of consider with your own life. And obviously there's an element of entertainment, like I said, to, explosions and laser swords and things.
Sure,
but,
sure.
But it's about a conversation, I think.
So what questions or conversations are most exciting to you right now, or what? Yeah.
I mean, I think I feel like I rarely kind of get persuaded by like current events sort of thing. So I'm not interested really, to be honest, in having a conversation about quarantine and COVID viruses and whatever the
isolation
and what Trump represents, or any of those sort of current affairs sort of stuff. Like
sure.
I think there's a place for that, but to me it's always about like larger philosophical issues, like I said, about the human condition, and about our own existential crises that we have, dealing with our own mortality, and kind of like understanding our place in the world and understanding our place in the universe, and what does that mean, like to me, as being an atheist and looking at the sort of worldview of we're all this sort of just this speck of dust floating in the vastness of the universe, and kind of dealing with that, and what does that mean, as far as like what is the meaning and the purpose we put to our own lives, and all those sorts of things. Those are the conversations I like to have.
Those are heavy conversations.
Yeah, and I think that to me, because that's what it's all about. As a director, I don't get the opportunity to make that many projects, and so I wanna make each thing kind of meaningful and have something to say, right?
Yeah. So in reference to that, let's say when it comes to making Fifth Passenger, like what topics were you tackling for that, for people that haven't had a chance to check it out yet?
Yeah, well, Fifth Passenger, the story is about 5 people in an escape pod after their spaceship blows up. So it's this lifeboat in space, and so it's about dealing with the sort of lifeboat type issues, like if you and I are in a place, and our survival is not guaranteed, and maybe by me killing you that ensures my survival, how does like morals and ethics and things like that come into play? Like if there's not enough air, there's not enough food for both of us, like is it right or is it wrong? Like, hey, if we both live, we're both gonna die, but if I kill you, maybe I get to live longer. Like I think those types of things are interesting, and also it gets into things about confinement and about isolation, and like how that can mess with the human mind, and stuff like that. And so those are kind of the issues about survival, and about our instincts, as far as us being animals, and when you strip away society, and you strip away all these things that we these like constructs that we have made, so that we can all interact, which are necessary when you've got billions of people living on a planet. There has to be rules, there has to be guidelines, and this is how everybody interacts and survives with each other in a sort of in a civil manner, right? And
air quotes. Civil.
Yeah, civil. And all those things are necessary and understandable, but you put people in an extreme situation, and you strip away all that civility, and then what are you left with? You have somebody there like I love Gilligan's Island as a kid, and that was kind of a very relevant sort of thing in that sense, where you have the millionaire and his wife, and you have the professor, and like on the island everybody's equal. Like actually on the island, the millionaire and his wife are like bottom of the rung, because they don't have any skills, they don't have anything to contribute, like because their money doesn't mean anything there. But for them, they still hold on to that. Like they still they still walk around with their heirs, and they try to have like fancy picnics, and because that's what they know. That's what they're like. The power and their meaning and everything comes from that, and so they have to desperately hold on to that because they don't have anything else. But everybody else doesn't recognize that as like, okay, that doesn't mean anything here on the island. It's about survival. We gotta catch fish. We gotta build a radio out of coconuts and make a boat and things like that. And so it's that kind of stuff that I find interesting, and I tried to have those kind of conversations in Fifth Passenger.
Yeah, no, I guess one thing that was going through my mind when we were talking about that in reference to, like, I guess maybe in some aspect of what's going on right now is I remember the fun fact. I don't know, it's not even a fun fact, but like I think the fact was society is like 2 weeks away from total. Just you can crumble in I think it was 2 weeks.
That is fun.
Where if yeah, it's very fun. So let's say if the virus hit and it were bad enough to where the essential workers weren't willing to go to work and risk dying, the truck drivers stopped driving, the people stopped stocking the stores, and within 2 weeks, everything is like gone. And then that makes me think, it's like, all right, well, how would I act in that situation?
Yeah.
I don't know have you thought, there's that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what has always interested me about zombie movies and things like that. Is and I've heard that. It's something to say. I've heard somebody say that we're only 9 meals away.
3 days. I don't know. 2 weeks is too long.
Yeah. I've heard that we're 9 meals away from anarchy. That's the thing. 9 meals away from anarchy, in that sense of like, if people don't have access to food that they can legally obtain through buying at the store or growing or whatnot, there's going to be anarchy because people are going to want to feed their children, and you can't blame them for doing whatever it takes to feed their children.
Yeah, it's the survival instincts you're talking about.
And that's what I've always found interesting about zombie movies is that like. Breakdown of society and the anarchy and all the like what happens in that post-apocalyptic sort of thing. I love post-apocalyptic stories like Mad Max and stuff like that. Those are, I think, I don't know if it's growing up in the 80s during the Cold War and stuff like that, and how he's like having that as sort of like a looming threat. When I was a kid, I remember any day. The Russia could the Soviet Union could send nukes over to us and nuke us into oblivion and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I love those kind of conversations and films about those topics and exploring that. Yeah,
because we're all. It's another the who we are question, like you said, as the atheist perspective. Potentially, or just human perspective too, with the isolation as well, where we're thinking. I know a lot of people you have the chance to sit with yourself and do nothing for a lot of time. You're kind of stuck in your brain, trying to figure out what's going on and who you are and what you're really providing for the world, and if you're happy doing X and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, putting yourself in the situation, or not even putting yourself, finding yourself in a situation like that where everything is stripped, you're kind of forced to become the person that you actually are. Yeah. And I'm curious to, I guess, like when you're writing too, I wonder, how do you approach deciding, like, how much do people really change from the society version to the dystopian version? Like, how different are we?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting question, and I like to think about, with like Fifth Passenger in particular, like I said, with the Gilligan's Island thing is you have people that are super adaptable and fluid and will immediately turn on a dime and adapt to that new situation that's happening. And so you want to have characters in there that do that, and then you have other characters that are so stubborn and refuse to like adapt to the new situation.
Yeah, they're clinging to
right to the old world or the old model or whatever that is. And so, okay, I can just hold on to this, and we can go back to how things were. We can go back to normal, right? And I think that's the conflict, and that's the dynamic, and I think that's what's interesting about screenwriting is like bringing those types of characters together, and then you throw in a character that isn't attached to is somewhere in the middle, just wants everybody to get along, right? And that's the sort of the ship of fools like story archetype, right? Is throwing different characters together in an extreme situation, just like seeing how they interact and forcing those dynamics and those conversations and things like that, for sure.
And how do you see yourself?
I don't think I'm any of those sort of things completely. I feel like I'm rather adaptive to new situations, but also, looking at the world as it is right now, there's that part of me that says, man, I just want stuff to go back to how it was. I just want to go back to the movie theater. I want to make movies that go up that play in the movie theater, and I want to go back to that world, right? But like I also understand how things are going, and it's okay now. I'm trying to like chart a new path, but because I'm not in my 20s anymore, so there's a certain amount of like how adaptable can I afford to be or whatever in that sense. Like I built a skill set, like, and if there was a world where making films wasn't a part of that world anymore, like what would I do? What would I be doing with my life and my career and stuff like that? And I don't honestly know, because I've spent at least the last 20 years working on being a filmmaker and taking those jobs and working in that industry and gaining those skills and making those connections and things like that. So I just want to keep making films and just keep doing that until the day I die, I guess. I guess
Well, it's definitely, you're describing the freelancer mindset for sure. The gig to gig, just doing what I love, and we'll see where it takes me. And
yeah. And I just got a gig for April. I'll be in Jackson, Mississippi, doing steadicam on a feature for like a month or so. I'll be out there. So so features and films are kicking back up again. So it's good, and I'm excited. So I don't have to I don't have to quit the filmmaker lifestyle and go on to something else.
Sure.
Quite yet.
Yeah, we're not at that point.
No. It's still happening. Yeah, the dream is still alive. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
Congrats on the gig.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I was gonna say, directing and directing the short film is, the horror film is more exciting to me, obviously, because it's ultimately what I want to continue to do, and what, like, if I was like doing just one thing, it would probably be directing. But I do love doing camera work. I like it's so much fun to be on set and to work with the camera and to be working with the other people on set and to being part of creating that vision of somebody else, and traveling on a show is fun. So that's, I feel like I never get tired of that, but I know that there's going to be a point in time where, I'm 65 years old and I don't want to be like lugging a camera around.
Steadicam.
Yeah. It's like, okay, at some point maybe I'll just want to like my body won't be as willing as my mind to be doing that kind of stuff. But until then,
that's when you just DP, right?
I guess, yeah.
What's his name?
Sit behind a monitor and
And you tell the Steadicam up what to do.
Yeah, for sure.
But I did want to. All right, before we transition into talking about that kind of work, I wanted to ask in reference to the dystopianness of Scott Baker.
Oh yes.
I was curious on taking the question I asked and kind of leveling it up a little bit
Sure.
just to see. So I kind of want to go with like the lost, like the lost method. So
Okay.
you're on a plane, you're traveling somewhere, and you guys crash land on an island, Gilligan's Island style.
Right.
What position do you imagine yourself taking on this island with this, the handful of, dozen people? Are you the type to try to take control and help corral everybody and figure out what's going on? Are you the type to stand back and kind of scheme on everybody, or like what's kind of?
Yeah, I think I feel like I'm very like a read the room kind of person, right? Where I'm gonna kind of evaluate the situation, and I think my instinct would be to like look around and say, okay, well, is there somebody that's more competent than me, that's already taking charge and kind of making sure that things are happening? Or is there like a power vacuum and there needs to be somebody to step up to make sure that things are going right? And so depending on the other people that I'm with, like I feel like I'm not the kind of person that feels the need to be in charge, but I'm willing to do that if the need is there for me to do that, right? In that sense, because I've been in situations like that where I was on a shoot years and years ago, and we were coming back from it, and it was like me and the director and one of the other camera guys. I was doing some work for these churches out in Inland Empire, and we were driving on the freeway, and there was we got passed by the motorcyclist who was like doing a wheelie, like zipping past us, going like 80 miles an hour doing a wheelie, and 2 minutes later we come upon him. He has crashed on the freeway, and we stopped to, because he had just crashed, and so there was cars coming on the freeway. It wasn't super busy, but it was a sort of like emergency situation. Like, oh my God, somebody's got to call 911, and let's make sure that nobody hits him because he's lying on the freeway and stuff like that. And so there was a bit of like people not being sure what to do, and I realized that there was nobody making sure that the cars weren't hitting him and like diverting traffic. So I asked somebody to do that, and then I asked somebody else, and it wasn't like I wanted to be in charge and I felt the need to do that, but I noticed there was nobody that was doing that thing, and so I felt, okay, well, somebody's got to step up and make sure that this guy doesn't get run over by a car. So let's divert traffic over here, kind of thing. And so so and that's kind of how I feel. But if there was somebody else that was already doing it, I don't have this like ego need to be like, oh, I need to be the one in charge to save the day. That's not really that's not really my nature. I'm just as well sitting on the sidelines watching if I feel like the situation's being handled appropriately. But yeah, like I said, if I'm willing to step up if I feel like the situation's not being handled. Yeah.
Okay. Because I for myself, I always imagine like, all right, because we're not big dudes here, I'm not gonna, if I'm on an island, I'm not gonna be powerhousing and alpha style fighting somebody to leadership. Like it's got to be a thought out process where I need to get along with people, and I need to be like squirmy and like run away a lot and like be really sneaky and be in the shadows.
Okay. Okay.
So I've thought about it a little bit.
I see.
It's not. I do like the idea, because let's say being a director in general, you're kind of like developing the part of the brain where you can delegate and you can kind of come up with the decisions quickly. That's the job, is making decisions.
Right.
So it does feel like it is the natural place. It's like, all right, everybody, like I have some ideas here. Ideally, it could be a collaborative effort where you're pitching them to your fellow crash landed people. Yeah. And
and I think that does kind of dovetail with my directing style. There's the idea that you can push people to where you want them to go, or you can try to pull people to where you want them to go, or you can walk alongside them where you want them to go. And
it's poetic.
yeah, and I like the latter thing of for me, I like getting talented people together and say, okay, well, you're the cinematographer on this project, and this is what I want to do in general. But you bring your voice to this, and you do it how you want to do it, and you and I will work together. And you're the costumer, and this is generally what I want the costume to look like. But I'm gonna let you decide all the specifics on how everything goes, as long as it fits within the story and it doesn't cause major conflicts. And same with the composer, and same with the makeup artist, and everything along the way. That sort of collaborative process where I'm helping to to lead everybody towards that common goal, where everybody feels like they have ownership of that thing, that part that they're doing. And it's not like, okay, this is my complete vision, and this is how everything I want to be. And because it's not about disparaging people who have that, because for some directors that works, and there's some of the best cinema that's been made is people who have that mindset. It's just not my style, and again, it's not about disparaging that and thinking that there's anything wrong with the sort of tyrannical mentality about it. I mean, definitely you can get into issues as far as like abusing people and not making like a safe and equitable working conditions and things like that. But as far as like creatively and things like that, I like to have input, because I like to think that I don't know everything about everything. I feel like I know a little bit about everything as far as each department and what they do, and obviously I know a lot about the camera department and things like that, and coming from that background, I always have a lot in that, but I also want to trust the other people to do what they do and to put their input, because somebody else is going to have an idea that I'm never going to think of, and they might suggest an idea and I don't like it, and I say, yeah, well, okay, that was a great idea, but we're not going to do it, and it's not.
Yeah.
But I always want that input there, and I always want people to be comfortable, having their ideas and that sort of spontaneity on set and things like that. Sometimes there's a place where things just kind of have to be done a certain way. Do a lot of like Fifth Passenger had VFX, and we had like practical effects with like an alien creature that was a puppet, and so scenes like that I would have very strictly storyboard and be like, okay, we're going to do this shot, then we do this shot, and then we do this shot, and we can't deviate from that plan unless we have a very clear plan
to replace it.
Yeah. It's like, because like I as an editor too, I'm thinking, okay, how are we going to edit this shot? Like especially stuff with like the little animatronic puppet alien, right? You have, it's just this thing that somebody's got their hand up its button and making it move, and you got to make it look like it's attacking somebody and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, how can we edit from this shot to this shot to make it look real and stuff like that? And so if we're just kind of willy-nilly going about it, then we're going to be sitting there at the editing being like, okay, well, we need a shot of this, and we never got that shot. So it's about having that storyboard ahead of time and saying, okay, we're going to go to this shot, and then we cut to this shot, and then we cut to this shot, and this is what we need in order to sell the magic of what we're doing with this kind of thing. And it's like, okay, we got to stick to this plan. But other than that, I think there's always rooms, you got a scene where it's just two people sitting there talking. I mean, there's 100 different ways that you could shoot that. There's no one right way to shoot it, and you could shoot it, like I said, 100 different ways, and you're in post, and now okay, I can cut it together, and I can make something work as long as we got all the lines covered in one angle or another. You can, cut away to the fridge or whatever. It doesn't really matter, But certain stuff like VFX and practical effects on set, you have to sort of like.
Yeah, especially on like the limited budget worlds, because I could imagine when you storyboard your VFX stuff. Like I don't know how it was for like Fifth Passenger, but like the VFX house or the VFX people are already kind of working on the assets as you're, or even before you're shooting, that you have references for. I don't know. So that way you literally, if you did change your mind, it's like, well, they're already working on it, and now it's going to cost more to scrap that and start all over again on this other idea.
Yeah. I mean, normally that would be the case with Fifth Passenger. Our budget was so small, and we sort of raised money as we went along, especially with like post production. So we didn't have that. I mean, I had an idea what I wanted a lot of the shots to be, as far as like the green screen stuff. We had to kind of know ahead of time, because you got to sort of commit. Like, okay, you got an actor in front of a green screen, and this is what they're going to be doing, and this is where the effect is going to go. And maybe I've had that conversation with a VFX artist, like, okay, this is what we want to do, and what's possible. Or more relevant, what's possible within our budget to do.
And they give you a quote for that specific thing.
Right. Yeah, this is how many shots, or this is what the movement of the camera is going to be, because it's a whole different world if you're talking about, okay, well, we've got an actor, sitting in a chair in front of a green screen and the camera's not moving, and we want to do a thing, versus like we had scenes where all the actors are standing in a set, and there's no green screen, but they're like looking at a sort of monitor screen, and the camera's moving, but we want to have something appear on the monitor screen, and it's got to track with the camera movement, and it look like it's really there, and not look like it's all jumping around weird. So the VFX artists are doing tracking and all this kind of stuff, and so. That stuff is more difficult, and anything that's more difficult is more expensive. So it's about having conversations with them and saying, okay, well, this is how we plan to do that. What's easiest for you, which translates into what's cheapest for us, to do. And so and it's about trying to like conform to those sorts of things. On set, but otherwise, but still, even within that, there's still room for people to like have creative input and stuff like that. But it's always about finding that balance.
So I'm always a fan of the constrictions and whatnot. Kind of focuses that creative brain on like, all right, these are all of our limitations. Let's play with that and see what we can mix up in there. And there was a lot of that with Fifth Passenger, where. We got into limitations of stuff, and we're like, okay, well, how can we turn this limitation into something that works for us? We did a lot, like in the editing process, a lot of jumping around in time in the edits, where we would shoot a bit of something and wouldn't necessarily complete the whole thing, but in the scope of the story, you have a lot of sort of, to compare it to, almost like a Pulp Fiction style, where you're like jumping around in time back and forth between two kind of storylines, and so that allowed us to jump in and out of a scene at any time that we wanted to. So it's like if we didn't get something completely, like, oh man, I really wish we had finished that scene, or we didn't get everything that we wanted for this, we could jump out of that scene and jump to the other timeline, and then jump back into that scene at a later time, skipping over something that we had missed, or something like that, which hopefully doesn't come across to the audience as that, but it comes across as, that's just sort of the organic way that the film plays out, and that's what they had planned, But Sure. So as far as, okay, because you mentioned as a director. And the way you like to direct with the collaborative back and forth, and like trusting your department heads and all that kind of stuff. For you, being that you have a lot of experience on the camera side, like you mentioned, it's always like, okay, like when I think about myself directing too, like it's a weird line between how specific is helpful, like, because you want to be as specific as possible. I don't know, like, it's weird. How specific do you try to be on each department versus, okay, on departments that you know a lot of versus departments you don't know a lot of? So you're having people that you're working with like how clear is your vision for each aspect of it, or
Yeah.
how do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting because I do have a lot of experience in camera. It tends to be very specific. You know, say, well, okay, well, we're gonna shoot this lens, and this is the type of camera movement that we're gonna do, and this is the shot I want, and everything like that. Where
And
there we go to makeup, and I'm like, make the guy look like he's dead. I'm not gonna be like, yeah, use this brush with this shade of blue, and like. I work with Thomas E. Supernant, which is he's like a 2-time Emmy award-winning makeup artist he's worked on like all the Star Trek shows and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Donnie Darko and a ton of films. He's a world-class makeup artist who does practical effects and aliens, and he did all the alien stuff on Fifth Passenger, and I never presumed to tell him. It's just like he amazes me. He's a magician and does what he does, and I come to him with an idea, and he comes to me with some sketches, and we go back and forth, and then he goes off and he does his magic, and I may have a couple of can you make it a little more blue and less brown, or something like that, but it's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when it does come to camera, I think there's the tendency for me to, I don't want to say micromanage. I think it all depends on the project, where as far as the cinematography side goes, I'm definitely more comfortable, more skilled, and more educated in the actual camera side of things, as far as like lenses and the camera settings and what the camera can do and camera movement and perspective and things like that I'm in, like on the lighting side of things.
Yeah, and how it's going to cut and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so like I know what I like in lighting, and I know more or less how to achieve what I like in lighting, but I don't have the complete knowledge set that like a really knowledgeable and professional gaffer has. With this, in order to get this, I'm going to get such and such light, and we're going to put this kind of diffuse in front of it, and it's going to be over here, and it's going to take this many watts, and like that kind of stuff. Sure. I don't know. I'll be just like, yeah, give me a big soft light from over there, and then give me something that's small and harsh from over here. And I let them go and figure out which lights and which lights.
Plus, right? the other element that I assume comes up is because when you are in the director chair, you are limited on your brain capacity too, because you are thinking about other stuff that's playing in the thing, and then the people you're talking to, that's all they're thinking about. So then ideally they can fill in the gaps, like you're kind of saying, you're counting on that.
Yeah, and that's the thing with like Fifth Passenger was like, it was such a huge project, a feature film where I'm dealing with, all the departments and lots of cast and the different crew and special effects and everything like that. It was like, I had to have a DP on that. Like even if I know I'm not the best DP in town, and like I know there's other better DPs than me, so I want to hire a DP that's better than me. I think I'm a pretty good DP, but I know that there are better ones than me. So why would I hire myself when I could hire somebody better than me?
Yeah, or worse than you.
Well, I'd prefer to hire someone that's better than me, and I know there's plenty of DPs out there, and the DP that we had on Fifth Passenger, Iwana was super great and talented, and I was continually impressed and with the work that she did and the shots that we got out of it, and her lighting choices and things like that. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I lean on the camera department more just because I am more familiar, and that's the world I know, and the smaller budget projects where there's fewer crew and there's less people, but they're wearing more hats. Obviously, I'm going to step in a little more. Like almost everything I've directed, I've done my own steadicam work on, and that's partially budget wise, like a steadicam operator's a sort of a luxury position to have on set as far as that goes. It's like it's not an essential thing when you're like, well, okay, we're on a small budget project, and here's our essential crew. Steadicam usually isn't in that that first line of people that you're saying, this is my essential crew.
Because
That
you're not usually utilizing that person for every setup. It's like they're specialty shots, and it's like
yeah, and
like you said,
it's
luxury.
expensive. Your rent, or the rate is higher than some other positions. And well, we can't afford to have a Steadicam on this sort of thing. So on low budget projects like that I'm directing, I'll just it doesn't cost me anything to bring my Steadicam in and to do it myself. And then there's also that bit of like I'm sort of bypassing that like communication. Like, oh, I'm gonna communicate with the DP that what I want, and then the DP is gonna tell the operator what I want, and then the operator is gonna go do the thing, and maybe something gets lost in translation there or something like that. Honestly, I've never directed something where I had a Steadicam operator working for me, so I don't know that experience from that way. I know as an operator working for directors what that experience is like, and sometimes I'll be on a project where the DP and the director have a different idea about what the shot is supposed to be, and there's an operator like, okay, the DP wants one thing and the director wants another thing, so and my tendency is always I got to give the director what they want, but I have to respect the DP as well, and so it's always like, so my conversation in that sense is like, okay, you told me that you wanted to do this, but I get the feeling that the director wants this, so I put it back on the DP to sort of communicate with the director, make sure that they get on the same page, because I don't want to be the person who's, not giving one or the other what they want, because, well, so and so told me to do this, like that's the worst situation to be in. I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and we know going forward. But so for me as a director, being a Steadicam operator, it's one less person that I need to communicate with, because I know what I want, and I tell the DP, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And okay, like they'll put the lights up and make sure that everything else is good for me to do what I'm going to do as an operator, and then I operate and I watch playback as a director and sort of evaluate it in that way. But
and then how do you bridge the gap on the departments? Like you're kind of half joking about the makeup side, but like for costumes and props and art and like production design and all that kind of stuff, how involved do you get on that side? Or
well, like Fifth Passenger, because our budget was so small, what we did with that was I worked with Mark Zickrey on his Space Command project, and I was his second unit DP, and I did Steadicam for him, and I helped build his sets, and I was helping him with his Kickstarter and stuff like that. And so we had kind of worked out a deal where we could shoot Fifth Passenger on his Space Command sets. And so when I brought in Robert Poe, who's our production designer, we had these existing spaceship sets that we had to alter to work for our project, and the sort of constraints that we were under with that was we had these cool looking sets already, which was bonus, cool looking sets already, like spaceship sets, right? But we had to alter them, one, so that they worked to fulfill specifically what our story was saying that these sets were about, because what like the main set that we had was this sort of command bridge, like in Star Trek, where you have the captain's chair in the middle, and then in front you have the lieutenants who are driving the ship, and then in the back you have computer monitors, then you got the door and stuff like that. So very, very Star Trek-esque kind of like semicircle command bridge sort of thing. And in our story, it was supposed to be an escape pod, and so the area was supposed to be sort of a living room, for lack of a better word, where you've got control panels and things like that, and you've got like a monitor in the middle, but it's not like there's a captain's chair where there's one person in the middle commanding everything. It's sort of like a communal sort of space, right? So we had to transform the set so that they worked for what we were doing. We had to make substantive changes to the style so that it didn't look like we were also on the Space Command sets, and then also the caveat to all that was whatever changes we made couldn't be destructive. We had to be able to go back and put them back to look like the Space Command set so that Mark could go back and shoot more Space Command later. Robert Poe does this great show on YouTube called Space Hospital, and it's this sort of General Hospital meets Mystery Science Theater 3000. Like if you ever watched Mystery Science Theater, not the actual movie where they're like making fun of the cheesy movies, but the bits where he's there with his little robot puppets.
I think I've only seen the commentary versions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's the little interstitial spaces where they're talking about the films, and they're like introducing the movies, and there's the other people, and he's got his little robot puppets, and they're making little things and stuff like that. So it's like that in a sort of General Hospital sort of thing, where it's this like soap opera that's cheesy, and you have all these weird characters and stuff like that, and so he does that kind of set and prop building where he'll get a vacuum cleaner, and he'll get a lid to a garbage can, and he'll get and spray paint them and glue them together and take ordinary household items and trinkets and random crap he finds and make it look like it's a spaceship set and robots and things like that. And so he's so creative and so like resourceful with that kind of stuff. And so after working with him on Space Hospital, I was like, that's the guy that we need on this. Somebody who can knows sci-fi, knows spaceships and all that kind of stuff, but also has that kind of resourcefulness of like, okay, how can we turn trash into a spaceship, kind of thing. But I didn't want, I didn't want like aliens. Like I love those movies, and it was a huge influence on what we were doing, like the Alien movies. And some of those other films where like even Star Wars, where it's like you got pipes and hoses and tubes and wires on everything, and like the sort of like used space kind of thing. I didn't want that. I wanted the more clean, like an Apple store. Like walk into an Apple store and it's like that. That's what I like Minority Report and things like that. That was my vision for like what I wanted, like Space Odyssey 2001 kind of stuff, right? That was the sort of aesthetic that I wanted to go with it. But so it was working with him, like because I helped build those Space Command sets. Like I didn't like design them or anything, but Mark's brother and this other sci-fi filmmaker Neil Johnson built the sets, and I just kind of can't help. And they say, okay, we'll hang the lights in there, and then put these panels there, and paint that this color, and that kind of stuff. That was my extent in helping to build the sets. I don't want to make it sound like I helped design the sets or anything like that. But so I kind of had a little bit of knowledge about the sets in general, and so it was working with Robert as far as like, okay, how can we turn this into something that looks cool, and so we would talk about ideas and look at different materials, and okay, well, what if we put this kind of panel here, and
so
take this thing.
To hop into that really quick, prior to the arrangement with Mark for the Space Command sets, did you have a vision for what it would look like prior, and then now you're like, this is what we got, and then you're trying to bring those elements back in, kind of?
Yeah. Okay. So I had the sort of the Apple Store kind of idea was already kind of in my mind, as far as like in a perfect world, this is I've got all the money in the world to make this film.
Did you have sketches and
such?
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. We had an artist do some cool previs sort of concept art stuff for that, and it was along those lines. That talked to him about it. It was like, this is the kind of stuff that we want to do, and he drew up some cool images, and we had some sort of reference photos to go off, or reference drawings to go off, and then we pulled stuff from other movies and said, okay, I like this and I like this, and that kind of stuff, and then it's like, okay, now this is what we got. What can we do for cheap, and kind of and one of the things that we found was they have what they call foam core, and it's this it's like huge sheets of it's like 4 foot by 8 foot white, and it's kind of like poster board, like it's got like it's like white poster paper with like a thin piece of foam in between it, and you know, like use it for like school projects. You know, you put your little science presentation kind of thing up, right? And but they make these in like sheets of like 4 foot by 8 foot, and so what Robert suggested, well, let's just get a whole bunch of that, and you custom cut it to put in at panels and stuff like that, and you put it up, and as long as it's cut nice and neat and it's laid in, you could just like tape it in there, and it looks like this sort of like molded plastic kind of thing that you see in like spaceships and airplanes and stuff like that. It like has this feel like on camera it looks like it's like molded plastic, but it's just poster board essentially is what it is, with like, you know, a little strip of foam in there to give it some rigidity. And so I mean we bought, I mean, I don't know how many slabs of that we bought, and just kind of covered almost everything in that, and it gave it like instantly, it gave it this like clean white appearance. And we had this hallway where that was part of the original Space Command set, and it was this cool looking hallway. But you know, we had scenes in the film where we needed to make it look like they were running down a hallway and then they were running up a different hallway and stuff like that. And so we just shot that same hallway from different directions, and then we would get the big uncut pieces of the poster board, the foam corner. We could just slide those in and make it look like a wall, or look like half of a wall, or things like that, so they could go around a corner. It looked like they were going around a different corner, and you shoot it at a different angle and stuff like that, you know. And I feel it works pretty good. I mean, it's hard because I know, I watch it and I know, oh, this is the same hallway, we're just shooting the other direction.
Right.
Hopefully when the audience watches it, it doesn't feel like that to them. It feels like we're shooting down a completely different hallway. But
normally an audience, we're not trying to figure out how they... Most non-film people are not going to be looking for that kind of stuff.
So, but yeah, so in that aspect, I mean, I was pretty intimately working with Robert as far as that goes. And then once we kind of had an idea what we were going to do, you know, then he went off and he did stuff and said, hey, this is what I'm looking. You know, what do you think? How does this look? And I said, oh, it's great. Let's do that. You know, and then you know, then the kind of the next problem would come up where we kind of we'd strategize stuff, and you know, and there was a couple things where I said, okay, well, you know, this is more or less what I want to do. You think you can make something like this happen? Oh yeah, I got that. I'll make it, and then come back, and him and we brought another guy named John Lane to do some stuff, and they were great. I mean, they made all sorts of cool pieces for us. You know, they made the table in the middle there, and you know, the idea is that the table is like illuminated from underneath, kind of like those architects kind of tracing tables. You know?
I guess just we fell off there. Recorder stopped.
And we're back.
Want to jump into, you're talking costumes.
Fifth
Passage.
In the context of like, you know, like my involvement and how much, you know, that is as a director. And I think like with costumes, you know, with all of our departments with this film, you know, we were working on a budget that was much smaller than our ambition. So it was always it was finding talented people that were coming on board, that were willing to go the extra mile and do more than we had money for. And I'm super appreciative for everybody who did that, and like Deb, who did our costumes, definitely went the extra mile and delivered more than what our budget should have allowed us to be able to deliver. And you know, we had some concept art for some of the costumes, and kind of had some other reference stuff. And she said, okay, well, this is, you know, get some measurements for the actors, and this is, you know, the number of costumes that we need and stuff like that. And then she, you know, come to us and said, oh, this is some options that we have for like little fabric swatches. You know, this is like this fabric, and we think of this one and this one. And like, oh yeah, you know, it looks good. No, it looks good. And you know, I don't know, it doesn't really matter on that one. Whichever one you think works best, kind of stuff. So
were you playing them in the light, or like with cameras to see how?
Not really. I mean,
kind of gauged it with your DP brain. You're like, all right, you can kind of
tell. It was more just like, I mean, you know, we had very limited options, so it was like, oh, do you want this in the blue, or do you want this in the black, or do you you want this
Oh,
in the tan,
okay.
or do you want this in the...
I figured it was like specific fabric types too.
Yeah,
This is gonna
there
play
was
like
there was a
this.
bit of that, of like trying to like avoid things that kind of were shiny. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're like, oh well, this character is going to be in front of a green screen, so let's make sure that they're not wearing green,
Mm-hmm.
or something that's shiny, because then that makes, you know, green screen and all the other kind of stuff hard.
Okay.
I mean, we did, you know, have a little bit of like shiny in the spacesuits were kind of a silvery and shiny, so that presented a bit of a problem and stuff. But that was almost just kind of like, well, you know, we're going to, like, we like this look so much that we're going to ignore what is the best practice for VFX and do it anyways. You know, which obviously led to some problems down the road. But sometimes you know, you gotta try to like be like, oh, this is what's most important, like the way the costume looks, and then we'll figure out how to make the VFX work later. You know. Yeah, it was you know, like I said, like limited options, but you know, it's like, okay, well, this is more or less what we want to do, and this is some things, and just go off and, you know, you do your thing, and very very little micromanaging as far as that goes, because
Yeah, and then remind me too. Is this the first sci-fi larger scale piece that you've done? Like, I guess, like, did you do any shorts? You had the chance to do costumes or do any cool makeup effects or anything to prep you for this?
Definitely a lot of makeup effects. Just like I said, like working with Philip and
Right.
Thomas and stuff like that. Like I've done a handful of like zombie type movies, and most of my experience has always been costumes. Is what like random stuff do people have, and okay, we're going to go to the secondhand store and buy stuff, or we're going to go to the military surplus store and grab jumpsuits, or, you know, that kind of thing. That up to this point, that had been my experience as far as costumes goes. A lot of experience working with makeup and, you know, custom and new makeup effects specific for the project I'm doing. That was definitely a world I was very comfortable with and like had a lot of experience with. But yeah, as far as costume goes, a lot of that was new. You know, like we did a proof of concept short film for Fit Passenger that was kind of like a trailer more than a short film, and that was renting a spacesuit from a costume place, and then like I said, going to a military surplus store and getting like flight suit jumpsuits that like that like pilots wear, and getting that as the costumes for people and stuff like that. So yeah, this was definitely my first experience like having custom costumes made, and that's definitely something that like sets sci-fi apart, I think. Because sci-fi in that kind of sci-fi where you're like in space, like Star Trek kind of thing, is like, it's like a period piece. Just the period is the future, where it has its pros and cons about it. The cons obviously is that you have to have something special made or put something together. Like you can't just have people show up in jeans and a t-shirt, right? Because that doesn't work, right? You have to have something else, whether you're taking something existing and you modify it, or you have something built from scratch. The pro side of it is that versus a period piece in the past, like you do something, this takes place in 1890, so this is very specifically what people wore in 1890, and we don't want this sort of outfit because people weren't wearing that until 1920, right? But in the future, you can wear whatever you want to wear. You know, obviously you're not, like I said, not going to probably have people with jeans and a t-shirt, but
well, I could pose. Maybe.
Well, in certain.
Sure. It depends on the story.
And in certain settings, right?
Yeah.
People lounging around. Yeah, they're going to be wearing jeans and a t-shirt, maybe. But you have somebody who's like working on a spaceship. They're going to be there.
We always go to like the military thought where they're wearing their uniform.
A uniform kind of thing, right? Yeah. So you get a certain amount of freedom because there's no set like, oh, this is what people wore in the year 3000. Nobody knows what people did.
Do you feel, because of course there are such big shows and influences such as Star Trek and whatnot, how do you feel that's limiting in some capacity on what the expectation of the viewer is to maybe want to experiment with something, but it's like we're in a spaceship, we're doing similar stuff to
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely, I mean, it's I think the tendency is definitely like as a filmmaker
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, well, you know, I like this thing from Star Trek. I like this thing from Alien. I like this thing from Star Wars. I like this from this particular show. And so you're referencing stuff that you've seen already in a show. And so I think that it's very hard to like escape outside of that and be like, I'm just gonna come up with something new. Like how do you even do that?
Because
Right.
it's not often that somebody's making a movie like that and they've never seen Star Trek or
Right,
Star
yeah,
Wars.
yeah.
They're always fans and grew up with the nostalgia of that.
Yeah,
so.
and you look at, you know, and what we also tried to do was we looked at what are people wearing like in real life? What do astronauts wear, and what do people in the military or in those sort of situations? What are those people wearing? And let's try to, you know, build stuff. But then you also get into a sort of art imitates life and life imitates art situation where certain things that are happening in the NASA and in SpaceX, those things are influenced by stuff that happened in Star Trek. So even if you're like, I'm just basing it off of real life is based off of some of those shows. They see stuff and they're like, oh, let's do this kind of thing, or you know, so it's very hard to escape that. And but I like things like shows like Dune, like David Lynch's Dune, where like the costumes and some of that stuff is like, that's weird and that's not practical. That's not what we would call like conventional kind of thing, right? And you know, we didn't really do that in Fifth Passenger. That wasn't really the world. That wasn't the kind of world I felt I was building. I felt like we were building a more realistic kind of. Right. I mean, definitely, it had. You know, I think Star Trek is definitely Star Trek or Alien are the closest as far as
Just like influences.
yeah in the setting of the world, right? Like we didn't diverge much into fantasy. You know, it was more or less reality based. Obviously, you have things like, you know, faster than light space travel. That's fantasy in the sense where, you know, what scientists tell us right now, that's probably not possible. That maybe we're never going to be able to break the speed of light and interstellar travel, like, you know, go to another planet that's, you know, 100 light years away and get there in a couple weeks. Like science tells us that's probably not going to happen. They're not saying it's impossible. They're saying, well, all signs point to that's probably not going to happen. You know, but aside from that, we more or less stuck to kind of like a reality-based sci-fi.
Yeah, it's grounded.
In that sense. So keeping the costumes and the sets and things looking more like, oh, okay, I could see this being what space travel looks like in 100 years if we develop the faster than light speed travel. All this other stuff looks normal. It's not like weird kind of stuff that's the fantasy world. Like I love that stuff. I really do. But that wasn't the story I was, you know, looking to particularly tell with the Passenger.
So you mentioned the other movie briefly. I'll just ask for your opinion on it since we're there. What are your thoughts on the new Dune trailer? Are you excited for this new Dune?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I'll see it, and I'm excited to see it. In the sense, I like sci-fi, and I'm always excited to see big stuff get made. You know, I feel like Dune is interesting because it's a known property, but it's not like Star Trek or Star Wars. You know, where it's a little more on the edges. Of it's not mainstream, right? Where like, you know, mainstream people are always talking about Dune. There's Dune, you know, conventions and things like that. It's a little more outside of the mainstream, right? So I'm interested to see the film. I really enjoyed the original Dune. Honestly, I've never read the book, but I'm interested to see what the new one is, and it might inspire me to kind of finally sit down and read the book, just to kind of to have these point of views and say like, okay, well now we have the original source material, we have Lynch's film, and then we have this new thing, and they're all kind of different takes on what the thing is. I think the original one is great, and it's I think parts of it don't age well, as far as like, oh yeah, this was definitely like an '80s movie, like there's just like certain things in there that like they didn't quite age real well, but I think it's a terribly engaging and entertaining film that really has like it's a kind of it's hard to look away. It's very like to me it's like it's on and it's like, wow, this is a film. Like there's something going on here. This is interesting, intriguing, just because of Lynch's influence on stuff and how he approaches filmmaking and everything like that.
Yeah, because I'm not familiar with Dune at all. Mm-hmm. So when they announced this Dune with the stars, the big like Marvel cast, like the huge Marvel DC actors are all coming together to play in Dune and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're from all the biggest budget movies. So it was kind of weird for me to see. It's like, why are they putting so much money behind this property? Like you said, it's on the fringes. Not many people reference it. It's not like a mainstream thing. Mm-hmm. So it kind of scares me from like I don't know. It's a weird thing. From the investment perspective of a studio to back it, I was kind of surprised, but
well, and also looking at like what happened with the original Dune film, it's largely considered a flop, even though it has a cult following and people like there's a lot of people that love that film. There's also a lot of people that don't like it, and it didn't do well commercially. Maybe in the long run, it made money as far as like home video sales and things like that, and you look at the life of the film after over 20, 30 years, that like, oh, now it's made money, but when it was in the theaters, didn't get the traction and didn't do what they thought. Like, obviously they were, this is the era of Empire Strikes Back and stuff like that, and they were thinking like, oh, okay, well this is going to be the next Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a blockbuster, and people are going to line up around the block to see the film. That didn't quite do that, I think that's and that is an interesting aspect of it. Thinking about like, oh, these are the kind of actors that are putting in it. Like, to me, it does say something about the sort of mindset going into the film, and what the film is going to be. And I think it could definitely suffer from being the sort of like executive run film. Like, okay, well, this is what the film needs to be, and it needs to be this, and it needs to be that, and it needs to be safe, and we're not going to take any chances. And like looking at like Lynch's film and being like, okay, well, everything that he did we're not going to do because it was David Lynch, right? But to me, that's what made the film interesting and engaging, was that it was someone like Lynch who took the film on. There's a really, really fantastic documentary called Yorodowski's Dune. I don't know if you've seen that. And a Polish filmmaker, Yorodowski, he did films like Holy Mountain and these weird, crazy, cool films. And he was going to be able to make Dune with, I don't remember, I want to say it was through Fox, and this was after Star Wars, and there was this was before Star Wars, and he had gotten all of these great people together, artists and actors and everybody. He had the huge binder of concept art and all of these things put together. He was going to make this awesome film out of Dune. And was like that step away from always making it happen, where you talk to the studio, and then the money's going to be there, and then the money's not going to be there, and then all of a sudden it all falls apart and it doesn't happen, But what ends up happening was all of the concept artists and the VFX people that he had all attached to the project those guys ended up going off and making Star Wars. They ended up going off and making Alien, and so like Ron Cobb and people H.R. Giger who designed the famous Alien of Alien, and that sort of look like he was originally found by Yorodowski, like saw his art, because the guy's like an artist, does paintings and sculptures and stuff like that. Said, "Oh, this guy's art is amazing. We got to incorporate this into this Dune movie I want to do." And then Ron Cobb and these other guys who like design spaceships and stuff like that. And he got those guys together and said, "Oh, they're going to design the spaceships for this movie and stuff like that." And those guys went on to design the spaceships for Star Wars and stuff like that. And so they those like that sort of like collective creative team that he put together ended up going off and making other movies.
Sure. So it's like the untold story of the true influence behind the biggest influences.
Yeah. And he made this book that he puts together. I mean, he was gonna have Salvador Dali act in Dune and stuff like that. I mean, it was just this crazy eclectic group of people that he had involved in this project, and it was going to be like, on in his mind, this is you could see all the pieces come together for like what this film was going to be, and it just never happened, And then after Star Wars and Alien, all those kind of came out, then they're like, okay, now we'll make this film, but it wasn't going to be Yorodowski doing it. They gave it to Lynch, and that's the story.
And here we are.
But yeah, so it's a really, really interesting documentary, and I think that one, and then there's Lost in La Mancha, which is the story of Terry Gilliam trying to make a Don Quixote film.
Don Quixote?
Don Quixote. Cervantes is the old story of a Spanish story about a guy, old knight who kind of goes crazy, and he's if you ever heard the term fighting windmills, it comes from that story of Don Quixote, and it's a famous story, and in the early 90s, Terry Gilliam tried to make a film, and they got like 2 days into production, and the film fell apart, and the funding went away, and it had like Johnny Depp in it, and it was going to be this amazing film, but like both of those are like documentaries. Like as a filmmaker, I watch, and they're both about films that failed to get made. And I've probably seen Lost in La Mancha probably 5 or 6 times. I made it kind of a habit of watching that film right before I got into production on another project of mine, to sort of like humble myself and prepare myself for the worst, and then looking at how fragile everything is in the filmmaking world, and that any film that gets made is a minor miracle, because there's so many pieces that have to come together and align for something to happen, where you start off with an idea, and the number of steps you have to go through from I have an idea for this film I want to get made to this film is in the movie theaters. Like you picture there's 100 million ideas for films that want to get made, and maybe 1 million of those get put into scripts, and then out of those million, 100,000 of those get considered for this, and then you're like whittling it down to where you have this 100 million ideas, and 0.00001% of those end up being in a theater somewhere, and there all the steps, and so many things can go wrong along the way, that it really does feel like a miracle that anything gets made in this town, as far as that goes. Like not necessarily just in this town, but in that sense of Hollywood and films getting made in any aspect. That really is humbling, and it makes you feel lucky as a filmmaker when you get something done, to be able to look back and say, as a director or whatever, like, yeah, I'm part of the club. I'm part of the club of people who made a film. Right, because
it's out there, you can watch it.
Because that really in the grand scheme of things, it is a small club, right? Like I said, you've got how many people do you know that have an idea that they want to make as a film, or that they've even got a script and they want to make this thing, right? And then how many of those that thing actually gets made, How many directors do you know who've actually directed a film that got made and got any kind of distribution and made its way out into the world? It's a relatively small number, compared to the number of people that are out there.
Stresses me out, man. Because then I even think about my brain goes to, all right, sweet, congratulations, you made a movie. Welcome to the club.
Yeah,
and then you think about, all right, well, think about all the people that are in the club now, and then now it kind of goes the other way too. Is like, how many people made a second film? How many people broke into this? And then then you reach the pyramid of like, all right, you got James Cameron or whatever, like way up there that can do whatever they want.
When it's like looking at like professional sports or something like that. Like how many kids are in high school and have a dream to be a basketball player or something like that, and then how many of those actually are in the NBA and are starting on a team or something like that, right? And it's the same kind of thing, and so I think it's a very humbling experience to watch documentaries like that and see people even like Terry Gilliam, who is a very accomplished filmmaker and has made some of my favorite films. He's definitely one of my favorite filmmakers, and to look and see, like, even after some successful films that he's made, that he gets like, oh well, yeah, this film gets it's plug pulled, and interesting thing is he ended up making the film. Like he I'm gonna say it was 94 when somewhere around 94 when he first attempted to make the Don Quixote film, Lost in La Mancha. There was what's it called? It was originally called something. Don Quixote of La Mancha or something like that was the original film title, something like that. Film got shelved, and then he ended up making the film. It came out in 2019. It's called the Man Who Killed Don Quixote, and crazy cool film, and I absolutely loved it. And it had Adam Driver in it. And it ended up being kind of a self-referential film where it was still the story about Don Quixote, but it was also the story about him trying to make the film about Don Quixote. Yeah. And really, really fantastic film. Really, really love it, and it would encourage anyone to watch it. But aside from just the film being a film that I loved, it was something that... so much respect for him, the sort of dedication to that, to be like, well, over 20 years later, I still want to make this film, and this is the film that's like burning a hole in my soul. I got to make this film somehow, and it didn't work out the first time, but it's still there, and I'm still going to make it, and to be able to come back to it after making other films in the meantime and say, I still want to do this. I'm still going to I'm still going to expend my capital as a filmmaker to do this, and I think that's an important thing, where it's like, as a filmmaker, like once you're in the club and you're like, okay, I made a film, and in certain circles being able to say, okay, now I have this certain amount of capital build up, where if my film was successful and people liked it, then I have an opportunity to make something else or to do something else with my life, with my career, because people saw that I made this film, so they're going to trust me to do something else. It's like, okay, how am I going to use that trust?
Sure. Right. Which brings me to my next question. Yeah. Is how much pressure do you or have you felt with following up with, congratulations, welcome to the club, you made a movie, now let's see you do it again.
Yeah, now what's next? Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like my journey is very, very do-it-yourself filmmaking, kind of learning as you go sort of thing, and a lot of the process with Fit Passenger was that sort of like figuring stuff out as I went along.
Yeah, right? Which I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I didn't have kind of like a mentor sort of like guiding me along and making sure that I was doing all the right things. It was just sort of like, I was very experienced in the filmmaking process, as far as like the pre-production and shooting and post-production editing, right? That's, I learned things along the way making For the Passenger, of course. I learned a lot in that process, and I feel like it made me a better filmmaker and things like that. But I didn't um, I didn't enter into like wholly new territory in the process of making that film until I got into the business side of like, okay, now we're going to distribute this film and going into distribution. And now this film is a vehicle for me as a director to the things that are further in my career. Like those were the new things that I was like new paths to tread down, right? And that was learning as I went along. And I feel like because I was learning those things as I went along, I definitely did make mistakes, and I didn't do everything to the best that those things could have been done.
Sure.
Right? Because you're learning. Like I said, I met with people, and Morgan and I, who was my co-producer on the project. We met with people and got their advice and all this kind of stuff as best as we could, but we didn't necessarily have one person that was like, we didn't have a producer on the team that was like, oh, I've produced 20 movies and I'll help guide you guys and take care of getting this film distributed and stuff like we didn't have that person on the team. Sure. So it was us sort of like trying to figure it out ourselves and like I say, getting advice from other people and stuff like that. And so I feel like we got really good distribution with Epic Pictures, and I'm super grateful to them for everything that they did for the film and to be part of their
family.
Their family and their catalog and library of films and whatnot. But as far as me as a director, I didn't know what the path forward looked like and how necessarily to like navigate that. And I feel like I'm still kind of figuring that shit out right now, right? So it's like, oh, dude, do I get a manager? Do I get an agent? Do I just, get the film out there and hope that somebody calls me and says that they like my film and want me to direct something else? And I wanted to be in a position, I think, where I was directing something that I wasn't necessarily writing and producing, like a director for hire, where somebody else is doing all that stuff and they just want me to direct the thing, maybe rewrite it or something like that. Sure, but I mean, Fifth Passenger was, a story that I had come up with, and me and Morgan wrote it, and we figured out how to produce it, and we raised the money, and we went into production, and then we went into post-production, and then we figured out, like, it was like, we were doing everything all along the way, right?
Yeah. Which I, of course, understand.
And that's, and at the level, it's like, that's what you have to do to a certain extent, right? Because there's nobody was reaching out to me and wanted me to direct anything. Nobody was giving me a project.
Don't wait. If you were going to wait for it, you could still be waiting right now, where now you have a movie instead, which is, of course, the same thing that I went through. Is like, all right, make it happen, because I have control to make it happen. In the meantime, you're trying other stuff. Yeah,
and so I wanted, I think, and I still do, to be in a position where I'm more of a director than a producer, right? In that sense, where with Fifth Passenger, I was a producer so that I could hire myself as the director. Right. Where I just want to be the director that gets hired. Then that's a thing, and that's tough to do. That's a much smaller, narrower path to go on. Right? There's fewer opportunities for that. It is easier to, in some sense, it's easier to write something that you're going to produce yourself that you hire yourself as a director for, because you're the person who's instigating the thing, right, as opposed to waiting for someone else who's starting it and then to find you, right? So to like finding that path, and I don't know that I did the things correctly in order to set myself up to like, oh, this is what I'm going to do to direct my next film and stuff like that. And I didn't immediately have a project lined up. And I think part of it is there was a moment I remember where I was talking with some friends, and we were just thinking magical Christmas land, like if you had the opportunity to direct any film, what would it be? You know, this was, you know, like I remember one of my films. Oh, I'd love to direct the follow-up film to a Return of the Jedi, right? Because this was before Force Awakens and all those had come out. You know, it was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, or you know, like, I'd love to make this film. I'd love to make a Iron Man movie or whatever. You know, and this was before I'd made Fifth Passenger, but I had the script and we were still trying to figure out how we could make the film happen. And I remember saying, like, Fifth Passenger is the movie that I want to make. Like, if I had the opportunity to make one film before I die, this is the film that I want to make. Like, if someone came to me and said, at that point, you have the opportunity to make the follow-up film to Star Wars, or you have the opportunity to make Fifth Passenger, there was a very large part of me that would want to say, I just want to make Fifth Passenger, because this is my story that I want to tell, and this is something to me that this is the film I want to make, right? And so kind of taking that mentality to it and putting everything I had into that film, and it took us 6-something years to go from the story to the film being made, was like such a huge part of me and everything that I put into that film, you know, every day, like waking up, like, okay, what needs to be done in this film? Or like how can I push that rock a little bit further up the hill today, you know? And then when the film was done, and it's like, you know, like, okay, the film was done. Like, where was that space in my mind to think about that thing that I was going to do next, right? Because my mind was just so focused on the task ahead of like pushing that rock up the mountain. There wasn't a thought of like, oh, I want to push that other rock up the mountain when I'm done with this one. I just want to get this one up the mountain and get it done, right? And so there was definitely a sort of like creative tunnel vision that I found myself in. That yeah, you know, I'm in the shower and I have a random thought about something that might be a good film, or I'm, you know, driving. You get these like random thoughts like, oh, this might be a good film, or you're having a beer with a buddy and, you know, ideas come up and stuff like that. But there's nothing that like in the course of that 6 years of making Fifth Passenger, there was no other idea, project, script that came to me, and I said, this is the next thing that I want to do. That is like, oh, as soon as Fifth Passenger is done, this is the thing that I'm going to jump on, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I totally get it, because, like, for instance, making my process was 2 years, and I know throughout the entirety of the process, people ask, is like, all right, like, what's the plan for distribution, or like, what? I'm like, hold up. I am currently trying to get this thing funded. Like, chillax. Don't talk to me about distribution. One step at a time here. So in order to guarantee that it's going to get done, like you said, the tunnel vision is like a necessary aspect in the self-producing, because nobody else is over your shoulder making sure you're doing the stuff or going through each step. So it's I feel you. I'm like, I can't think about the next one. Like, I'm trying to get this one done.
And then when it's done, then you have people like, oh yeah, so what's next? Like, I don't know.
Like wait.
It's like you're like drowning, and you know they like pull you out of the water, and they resuscitate you, and you're like, and they're like, okay, what's your next dive going to be into the water? And you're like, I had to survive. Like, I'm just happy to be alive, you know, and have made it through this process. And you're asking me what I'm going to do next, you know. And so there was definitely a period where after the film was done, I just kind of floating in the world, you know, and just kind of like reassessing my life too. Like, okay, well, I did this thing, you know, and I didn't know, one, that I was even going to come out the other side of it, and now, and let alone what that was going to look like and what it was going to feel like and what was going to happen, you know, like, you know, is this film going to go, you know, is it going to be a huge smashing success and get into all these film festivals and get all these awards and blah blah blah, or is it going to be, are we never even going to get distribution for it? Is it going to be somewhere in the middle? Like I had no idea where this thing was going to end up, you know. And then to come out and be like, okay, now it's done, and so like, okay, now, like, what have I learned from this process, you know? And I think one of the biggest takeaways was definitely like, well, this thing took me 6 years to make from concept to delivery, right? I'm not eager to just jump on something else and I'm going to commit because I know what that path looks like, going down that road, I was married once and then ended up getting divorced because got married young and things didn't necessarily work out. I don't regret the things that happened. I don't regret that, but I also look at like when I have relationships with people now and I think about, oh, is this someone that I want to be with, and is this someone else that maybe I'll marry? I've already been down that path and I know what that path looks like. So it's like I can kind of like that like supremely like influences my feelings about that sort of thing, and it's the same way with like filmmaking. Like I know what that path looks like going down this film, and that commitment to this project. And so is that a path that I want to go down again, as far as I'm going to write and produce and fundraise and
edit
and do all this stuff for this other project again? Do I want to do that? Or do I want to try to find a slightly different path to kind of go down and stuff like that? And so I think it was a huge like evaluation process. The following like the period after Fifth Passenger was done, and kind of like also sort of like feeling out like, oh, is how do people feel about the movie? Is my phone going to start ringing and people going to start messaging me wanting me to like direct projects and stuff like that? And I had people approach me with projects that they wanted me to direct. But they were mostly, in reality, they were projects they wanted me to produce. They thought, it's like, oh, I have the script, I want you to direct it. But it was more like they wanted me to produce it. Like, I don't have any money for it. They don't have a production going for the film.
Yeah.
Here's a script. Can you make it for me? Was more or less what. And it's flattering. Like, I was humbled and flattered that people had their stories, had seen Fifth Passenger,
and they would trust you with their story.
Yeah, thought like, oh, this is the guy that I want to make my thing. And like I said, humbled and flattered that they thought that highly of me, for that. But in reality, they wanted more of me to just direct. They wanted me to figure out how to get their film made.
Yeah, they're like, oh, how do I get my script made? Who's made a film that I know? Oh, Scott's made something maybe.
Yeah. And and it was like, so do I want to go down that road again? And it's going to be that same road, right? But now I'm not even doing it with my script. I'm doing it with somebody else's script,
right.
And it's not saying that person's script wasn't good or it wasn't good enough or something like that, but the impulse is say, well, if I'm going to go down that road again, I'm going to do it with my own project, something that is personal to me, that I want to do. Like, what's the next Fifth Passenger for me that is like burning a hole in my soul, that this is the story I want to tell. This is everything I want a movie to be. Part of the sort of impetus on Fifth Passenger was, I watch a lot of trailers. I love movies. I love watching films. And I watch, obviously I watch more trailers than I watch movies. But I look at trailers and I'm looking for the trailer for the film that I want to watch. There's like I don't necessarily know what it is I'm looking for, but it's like I know it when I see it, right? And there was a void of like the kind of film that I wanted to see, right? And when I came up with the concept for Fifth Passenger, and I thought about what the trailer would look like and what the film would look like, and I was like, that's the film I want to see. Like, I want to see the trailer for that movie, and I want to go to the theater to see that movie. Like, I don't see that movie getting made anywhere. Where's that movie, right? And so that was it for me with Fifth Passenger, and I want that again. Like, I want to make a film that tells a story that I want to tell, but it's the kind of film that I want to go see, because I think that's what, like, part of being an artist is about, is like, it's not about it being masturbatory in the sense where, oh, this is for my own pleasure, this is the thing that I want to do, but in the sense of like, I have certain tastes. There are films that I like to go see, and plenty of other people like those films too, and plenty of other people want to go see those films too. So if I make something that appeals to me, then there's probably another section of the population that film also appeals to. And so if I make something that I think is appealing to me, then it's going to appeal to some other people, and obviously it's never going to appeal to everybody because that's not how art works, right?
Yeah.
And so I want it to be that, while I'm open to directing something else. If somebody came to me and says, "Hey, I've got this script about a dog who saves Christmas,"
I don't know if that's for me.
yeah, I don't know if that's for me, right? I might take that as a directing job, as so hey, we're going to pay you to come out and direct this film, and
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like we want you to direct this. Like here's a paycheck. I think, all right.
yeah, and it's like
how much?
Yeah. Where's that line, and like what, like as an artist, right? Like what do you say is like, okay, this is the line that I will not cross, right?
Because what they're asking for is your time, and time is valuable. And like you said, I mean, being that you were producing and everything and involved in post, that's a little bit more time intensive. But even as a director on something that you're just directing, that's still years of your life.
And emotionally investment, right? And as an artist too, it's like, okay, this is who I am, right? And you look at somebody like David Lynch or Terry Gilliam, or even let's say maybe more mainstream directors. Christopher Nolan or something like that, right? You say, like, who is this director? What is their brand in a sense, right? Like, who are they as an artist? Like you see a Christopher Nolan movie, and you go in with a certain kind of expectation as far as like, this is the kind of film that he makes, right? And if you took somebody like him and you look at his library of films that he's made, and then there's a film in there about a dog who saves Christmas, right? Like that doesn't just really seem on brand for him, right? And it's like looking at your career of like, okay, so now I'm the director who makes the movies that go on the Hallmark Channel about the dog who saves Christmas, right? And so like, well, where's that push and pull of that sort of thing? Like as a steadicam operator, whatever. Like I'll go into a movie about a dog who saves Christmas, and I won't think twice about it, right? Because I'm just operating the camera, right? There's my artistic style as an operator, and what gets me hired on projects is not necessarily the content of the films that I'm on, but like the quality of the project in its end form, and like, does the camera movement look good? Is it smooth? Is it framed well? Is all that kind of stuff. The size of the crew and the people that I work with, and the relationships and all that is so much more important than the actual content of the film itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. I mean, when I'm working as a script supervisor,
right,
I don't necessarily need to buy into the creative elements of the projects. I'm not directing it. I'm here to support the director and make sure it's going to cut, and make sure it makes sense, make sure all those technical aspects are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting how it doesn't matter sometimes.
yeah. I mean, you get into obviously you can kind of get into areas where you're like, okay, what is like where are my ethics? Where do I draw the line? Sort of stuff. Like I was asked to a DP music video, and I didn't realize really what it was. No, they didn't even send me the song ahead of time. It was like, well, this is what the shots are going to be, and we just need these sort of shots for this thing. And I get there, and this sort of like, it almost seemed like a spoof. Sort of, I almost thought it was like a Team America World Police kind of like, but it was this sort of like very right wing, like militaristic country song about like, go military.
Okay.
Like the chorus was something like, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, we're gonna go kill the bad guys. Kind of like, it was like, that was almost literally what like the chorus was, something about like going off into other countries to kill the bad guys kind of stuff. And I was like this is like so much like not my like my sort of political views and stuff like that. And it's not just about political views. I mean, there's political views like, oh, what should the minimum wage be, and how high should taxes be, and should we You know, there's those sorts of like political questions, you know, and then there's other things that are like, oh, we're bombing brown people in other, you know, poor brown people in other countries, or we're taking away people's human rights, or we're like those to me are like more than just political ideas, right? Like those are like real world consequences for people's lives and things like that. That I feel like that's not just that's just not just politics, right? Right. To me, that's something more than just politics, right? And so to be part of something that is like that, I felt was like endorsing that. I was like, wow. I mean, I was already there, and there's a sort of, I guess, the kind of overriding sort of ethical morals of like, well, they've hired me for this thing and I showed up, and they need somebody to shoot this thing, and so I'm going back on my word to just like leave and say, oh, I don't agree with the content of this thing. I felt like it was very close. Like it was like there was a part of me that just wanted to like leave, and then there was that part of me that said, oh, well, as a professional, they've hired me to do this thing, and so I'm going to do this and everything like that. And I feel like, what's that?
I was gonna say, so was it more? It sounds like it's more of like a lesson learned thing. It was like, I should probably clarify what the project is before I land.
Yeah, for sure.
So it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you know, where would that line have been for me? You know, I don't know. Like if I had gone there and it was like they're singing about white supremacy, like okay, yeah, sorry, I gotta go. This isn't for me, right? But it's tough because in the world of freelance like camera work and stuff like that, you know, I've been a part of projects that I didn't say philosophically agree with, and I think that it comes down to like there are these lines, right? You know, and but you know that was, I think, the thing that I feel like I was most, I found morally objectionable that I've done, you know, and like I said, it was definitely a lesson learned, and I feel like it was, you know, as much as I didn't agree with it, I feel like it wasn't as bad to be like, okay, this is, you know, like extremely morally objectionable, you know. It was so much on the line there for me that it was just very cringy, and just like, I just want to go home. I just want to pretend this day never happened, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's been a topic I've talked about on the podcast before with some different creatives with the line that you reference is, because that's the tough part about doing the thing you love too. It's like, I just enjoy being here, being involved in the creative process, that I'm willing to work for basically nothing, or I'm willing to show up for free, or I'm willing to work with people that I like, or and then, you know, especially now with like, you've got the health issues, is the crew keeping up with the health protocols?
Right.
Are they being cool about timing with lunch? Are they letting us go on time? Are they assuming that we're going to stay into OT for free? Like all that kind of stuff. It's like, all right, you guys are not treating me right. I'm out. Like where's the line? On the crew side, actors have to deal with a whole different aspect of what they're being asked to do, and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of come up with me too. Like I've come close too with like projects where I'm like, I don't want to be on this anymore. And I don't like the way this is being run. So it's kind of like the same thing. It was like, well, I guess the lesson I'm going to take away is I'm just not going to work with this team again if they try to bring me back. But while I'm here, do my job right, finish it, and get out.
And I think that is tough. Like as a professional, you have to sort of like straddle that line, and like, you know, what is like. Thankfully for me, I don't have any objections to, you know, violence and horror elements and things like that. So I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I know there's people who like, oh, I'm not going to do horror films. I won't do anything that has sexual content in it. I won't, like, that to me doesn't bother me. I don't have any moral, ethical boundaries as far as that stuff goes, you know. But
I mean, as long as everybody's being respected. And all
right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, I mean, it's not actually harming people or exploiting people in real life. You know, I mean, I think with film, and because it is art, there's a place to have content that pushes the boundaries of, you know, what people might say decency or things like that, because that's part of what art has always been about.
Sure.
You know, and I think it's always in the manner in which it's done. You know?
Yeah, that's more of the issue. That's more of the place where I found the issues, is more of like the process in which it's happening, and the lack of transparency on decisions, and we can tell something's going on here. You guys aren't, like, where's our paycheck? Like that whole kind of,
right,
that kind of stuff is.
I did a horror film, and there was a scene where a character gets like disemboweled, and the guts and blood going on the face and things like that, and they didn't tell the actor that they actually had used real, like, animal intestines for some of the thing, you know.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, the actor was not happy at all about that, and I feel like that probably just could have been mitigated if the actor had known ahead of time about that, and maybe given the option. Like, he might have said no, and then they would have had to find another solution. But he might have also said, yeah, okay, well, just, you know, let me know ahead of time. That way I know what's happening. And I felt like there was definitely, that was very, very, like,
communication, everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's about respect for people, you know. And I tell people, you know, when I'm steadicam operating, or like I'm camera operating, or I'm on a job in that capacity as like below the line crew, I don't ever complain on set. You know, the only time that I'm going to complain on set is when I'm not being respected as a human being. I'm not being respected as an actor, where my health and safety isn't being respected, or I'm being treated I'm being treated unusually disrespectful, in the sense of like someone yelling at me because I didn't do what they wanted creatively, you know, without the input, like, you know, like they didn't communicate with me what they wanted, and then when they didn't get what they wanted,
and you're getting the blame for it or whatever.
Yeah. And there's a communication that can happen. It's like, oh no, I wanted this instead of that, and then there's like, oh, listen, you MFer, like there's a difference in like respect and communication and stuff like that, and then like as a Steadicam operator, like camera operators and Steadicam operators in specific are often put in places where they're asked to do things that are unsafe, and there are levels to unsafety, and there are different approaches on how unsafe things are put into action, right? So there could be a shot where I'm in a moving car and I'm holding the camera out of the window of a car, right? And that can be done safely, and that can be done unsafely. That can be done in a way where the director just shows up and expects that that's what I'm going to do, and doesn't really care about my safety, just wants me to do it. And then there's the other approach where the director says, well, this is the kind of shot that I want, and I'd love for the camera to be here doing that. How do you feel is the way to go about doing that, right? There's all those different kind of approaches, right? I was doing another horror film where the actress was getting chased by the masked guy with a machete, and we were going through the backyard, and they run along the side of a pool, and then they take off over there, and they wanted me to be leading the actress, to be running like right alongside of the pool with them, and I said, I'm not going to do that, you know. And I didn't just say, no, I'm not going to do that, you know. I always approach things very diplomatically and things like that, but it was like they had already kind of like planned out the shot. This is how the shot's going to go, and this is where the Steadicam operator is going to go, and this is what's going to happen, without talking to me and saying, no, this is the shot that we'd like to do. How do you suggest we do that thing? You know, and I approached it, you know, like I said, I approached it diplomatically, but I was also very firm and tried to make it like a learning experience for them. See, okay, this is what you're asking me to do, and just to let you know, I'm not going to do this thing, and this is why I'm not going to do this thing, and this is why you should never expect anyone to do this thing that you're asking them to do, right? You're asking me to carry 50 pounds of gear that's strapped to my body to run alongside of a pool that could possibly be slippery, where things are moving very fast. And even if I have a spotter, I could easily slip and fall into the pool, whereby not only would your camera gear and my camera gear, be damaged, but I'm risking my life on this thing, because I could drown, because all this thing is holding me down and I can't get out. So let's think about artistically what you want to do, and how can we achieve that in a way that makes me safe and still gets what you want to do, right?
Yeah, and then ideally you have, because I could imagine a plus of camera team too is that there is a team involved, and you could ideally have the DP backing you up because they have experience with this and that whole kind of thing. Because I think about actors a lot with sometimes, especially in more of the indie world that I navigate a lot, is a lot of the actors are just starting out, they're greener, and they'll say yes to things that you can kind of me as not the director asking for the thing, I can kind of gauge that they're a little bit uncomfortable with saying yes to the thing, but the director hears the yes and like, all right, great, we got the yes, we can do the thing. So then sometimes there's been times where I've had to speak up talk to the director, like, I don't know if this is like blah blah blah, because I know an actor is unlikely to speak up. So I don't know if you've had moments like that, but like there's one where it was the actor was going to get smacked in the face, or like punched in the face, kind of like a side fist kind of thing. And the director wanted it to happen for real, and the actor was all for it. And I'm like, no, you don't actually get punched in the face when you're going to get punched in the face. Right. And we did it for real like a few times, and then we switched angles, and I spoke up, and I'm like, okay, we're not going to see it in this angle. Maybe tell him not to go for it. And then the actor finally spoke up, and I was like, yeah, I'm actually got a headache. Like, I mean, I was like, all right, sweet. I'm glad I spoke up. But regardless, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Very. I want to say it was the same horror film I was on, where we had an actor was wearing this sort of grass skirt kind of thing. It was like it was a
luau kind of.
That sort of thing, and like holding a torch, like a legit torch that was like burning fire.
Sure.
And he's wearing this flammable outfit, and the actor was okay with it. I was the camera operator and going like, this is a really bad idea. And even if there's guys standing right off camera with fire extinguishers, this is still a really bad idea, because one little spark in this skirt goes up into flames in 2 seconds, and before you can get there with the fire extinguisher, the actor's burned. And it's like, I'm the camera operator, and I'm not anywhere in that line of like authority to like say yay or nay, and I'm not being affected by it directly. I'm going to be back here with the camera. I'm not going to get burned. But if anyone's asking me, this is a really bad idea, But yeah, I mean, it's there, and I think so. So those are the kind of things where like I would like complain on set on stuff, is like, I don't even
think it's complaining.
Well, saying but I mean,
speaking
or we're going 14, we're like 14, 15 hours in, and no one told us this was going to be over a 12-hour day. And it's not about being like a whiny crew member, and it becomes dangerous because you work 14, 15, 16 hours a day, and then you expect everybody to drive home for 30, 40 minutes. And that's very dangerous, driving home when you're tired and you've been working all day, and people get in car accidents and things like that. And so I don't know. I kind of like, I don't know how we initially started on this, but I think I was just kind of saying, as far as like my attitude on set, is very much, I try to keep things positive. I love being on set, and I feel super lucky and super fortunate that I get paid to do what I do, whether it's directing or it's camera operating or anything like that. Like I feel so lucky to be on set that I enjoy being there, and I work sometimes on set with people, and it's a low budget, and people aren't getting paid a lot of money, but it's like they've agreed to it, but then they're still kind of complaining and blah blah blah. Oh, I'm not getting paid very much, and this. It's like I don't have space for that, Like it's like I'm there. and I'm excited to be there and working and you know, if it's a low rate, that sucks, you know, but if I've agreed to it, you know, and as long as everything else is, is like I said, is like I'm being respected in every other sense. Like I'm not going to complain about that. I want to be there, and those like as far as like picking people that I want to work with in the future and stuff like that. I'm always keeping an eye on that sort of thing. Is it's like you know somebody has a bad attitude or they're sort of like complainy about stuff. I don't like that. I like, you know, like I said, to be.
You want team players.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I don't know. Yeah,
yeah.
tough.
I mean, it's like you're going to war with somebody, and you're there 12 hours in the trenches with someone. You want people there that you can get along with, that have the same kind of attitude. I like to make jokes on set, and you know, laughing and having a good time, and it's serious, and everybody's there to work and get the stuff done. But we're also, like I said, super fortunate to be doing what we're doing, and it's about the art, and I think, you know, part of that is people feeling at ease and feeling comfortable, and you know, part of that's about, you know, having humor and enjoying what you're doing and stuff like that. And you know, it is hard work, but it's also it's fun, and it's you know, I like to bring that to set and have fun and stuff like that. So yeah. No, 100%. Yeah.
I want to jump topics a tiny bit.
Oh, okay.
Barely.
Yeah.
It's movies that inspire you, because there's two. I don't know. I think I scrolled through your Instagram and I was like, oh, you kind of shouted out these movies, so I wanted to see what your thoughts were on them. And I'll say both just up front. 1917 and The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Those are more recent movies. I think those came out
2019.
2019.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were considered for awards. Yeah.
I enjoyed both of those films immensely. Different films, definitely had similar aspects to them. A Lighthouse is definitely a sort of like an art house film. Definitely recommend that film to anybody.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson
and Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Incredible performances. The same director who did The Witcher, I believe.
The Witch.
Yeah.
Not The Witcher.
The Witch. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Witcher's
Witcher's the show with what's his face, and that was a fun show. But yeah, no, the Witch. You're right. Pardon me on that. And I the director's name escapes me, but yeah, black and white, shot on film in the sort of like 4:3 square aspect ratio. Absolutely loved it. Just that's the kind of film that like I love to watch. I love to see get made. You know,
Robert Eggers.
That's the guy. And 1917, sort of an epic, you know, war film. The thing is, like, I generally don't like war movies. You know, generally just not my cup of tea. But this one I absolutely loved from a filmmaking standpoint, technical standpoint, you know, and also just I was engaged in the film because it was very personal, and it wasn't. It was one of these ones where it's about a guy in a war setting, but the movie's not about the war. You know, it's about something personal. It's about someone's journey and stuff like that, and that really appealed to me, and just so engaging, and the technical aspect of the kind of the feel of the oneer, where it's these long steadicam shots, and then your crane, and everything's kind of seamlessly edited together to feel like the camera never cuts. Is just I was just enthralled and just pulled in from the very beginning of that film, and just I was on board all the way through, and I watched it at the ArcLight there in Hollywood, and just if you've ever been there, the ArcLight's kind of cool because the front row is far enough back from the screen that you can comfortably sit in the front row of the theater and not be like looking at the film like that.
Not
So
hurt your neck.
So I love sitting in the front row there, and just I was just like this, like oh my god, it's just like, but it's not it's not like a Top Gun Marvel kind of movie. I mean, obviously there were some action scenes and stuff like that, but just the drama and the tension of it, just so well crafted and everything like that.
That one was directed by
Sam Mendes.
Cinematography by.
Roger Deakins. Yeah, he
Yes,
got
sir.
his first. He got his first Oscar for that, which is interesting because world renowned cinematographer who's done fantastic films, and for him to finally get an Oscar for a film like that, you watch some of the behind the scenes about how they made that film, just technical achievement like hardly anything else as far as like the camera team and what they did to make that film happen in the way that they made that film happen. And obviously the VFX and the editing team did so much to sort of like stitch things together and make it feel like the camera never cut. But
I listened to, I think the DGA has a podcast, and Sam Mendes, I'm pretty sure this is what Sam Mendes was on there talking about his experience making the movie. And the one thing that I kind of liked about what he was saying was when he was planning out all the shots and they were working through the blockings and where the camera was going to be for each moment, keep it interesting and deciding which moments you're seeing the dialogue talk, which moments, like all that kind of stuff. The one person that he always had by himself, by his side the whole time was the script supervisor. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Shout out to the script supervisor. Because that kind of stuff for that movie is that you really need to know where's the cut? And how are we gonna hide this? And the timings and the beats.
I was watching part of the behind the scenes, and they had like the part where he's like running through the city, and there's like the rockets are going over, the flares are going over and stuff like that. Like they actually so they had the little model of the rocket. And they said, okay, this like little action figure going through here, and Deacon was actually they had like a little light on a stick and going like this to kind of this is the path that the flare is gonna go, so we can see like we wanted to go exactly this path when he's running up this part so that the light goes over and hits him just this like just like the attention to detail and everything like that, just amazing. I mean, obviously that's ginormous budget film, and you couldn't have made that. Like, they're sitting around all day waiting for the clouds to cover the sun just right, and then they're like, and let's go, kind of thing. Is like you can't do that in an indie film. You're just sitting around waiting for the clouds to do what you want them to do, or the sun to get to the right spot. Like who has an opportunity to make a film like that? Like Terrence Malick or something like that.
Right.
But as far as like early films when I was young, the films that influenced me, I'd say there were three films. Like I said, like Twilight Zone and Star Trek as far as like TV stuff that I watched that like influenced me greatly. But as far as feature films, the original Star Wars, with The Wizard of Oz, and Clash of the Titans, the old Greek mythology with the Harryhausen stop motion stuff, just magical, just absolutely magical. And I think for a generation of people who watched films like that, there's I don't know how familiar you are with the Clash of the Titans.
I've only seen the latest reboot from 2000 whatever.
that film's a travesty that does neither justice to the Greek mythology tales or to the original film.
Tell you what, they had a great trailer though. I like the trailer.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. The CGI
the
monsters.
The sequel was even worse.
Yeah.
Anyway, the classic.
Yeah, I mean the film suffers from the era in which it was made.
Can't fault it for that, though.
Yeah. I mean it's like these sort of like long exposition films and kind of something seemed kind of hokey in it, but the action scenes and all the stop motion stuff. There's a scene where he goes into Andromeda's bedroom. Perseus goes into Andromeda's bedroom, and she's sleeping, and there's this like kind of spell that's been cast over her, and she wakes up from her sleep to sleepwalk, but like her body is still there, but it's like her spirit comes up, and there's this giant bird. It's like this vulture comes down, and this vulture is holding this cage, and it comes flapping its wings, and it lands on the balcony by her bedroom with this cage, and it sits there, and she gets up, her like spirit or whatever gets up from the bed and goes and gets in the cage, and then the vulture jumps up and grabs the cage and flaps and flies away, and it's this stop motion, like claymation stop motion sort of stuff that Ray Harryhausen does. And just so magical the way that it happens, that it feels real, but also in a surreal way, where I don't know if you've seen much of that old stop motion kind of work in film, but they did it in like short, like smaller frame rates than they would do like normal film is like 24 frames per second, right? So they would do this at like 15 frames per second. So it's a little like jumpy and kind of stuttery in the movement, but the way Harryhausen works the animation into it, he kind of plays into that, and there's a feeling of like unease, that it feels real how these stop motion characters are moving. There's something unreal about it, but then there's something that just like their movement is so natural, and it feels just kind of magical and surreal, and it was just so captivating as a child watching that kind of stuff, and that always kind of stuck with me, and I think Wizard of Oz, such a like another like magical kind of film, where you look at it now and it doesn't live up to the standards of like how like if they they made the newer kind of Wizard of Oz movies with like James Franco and stuff like that, and you look at like the style and the way that those films were made versus the sort of very like the MGM stagey musical kind of things that they made back in the day when Wizard of Oz was made, but to be able to like put that aside, and I think, I mean, as a child born in the 70s and grew up in the 80s and stuff like that, I think we've seen film progress, and definitely in the last 20 to 30 years we've seen huge leaps as far as like technical achievements in film, as far as like CG goes and stuff like that, to where there's no going back to a lot of that stuff that we saw that was made in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, right? They're just like that stuff, like some of those things just don't work for modern day audiences. They expect a certain level of stuff, but at the time, like there wasn't the stuff to compare it to. You watch this stuff now and you're like, oh, that looks hokey and that looks cheesy and that looks bad, but it's like at the time that was the best there was, and there wasn't this stuff to compare it to, and again, that
was the equivalent of like the revolutionary CG
at
the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Wizard of Oz, just one of those movies that every time I watched it, I was just always kind of captivated by the story and the way the whole thing was put together, and I think there's definitely layers and meaning and stuff like that to the film, but just it was those kind of things that like as a child inspired me. Like I watched them and it was just like the magic of filmmaking, right? And those were the films that sort of like I watched, and it was just like, yeah, this is where I want to be. Like I want to create that kind of magic. I want to create those kind of worlds, and film is film is a dream, right? It's this ability to create a dream world, where anything can happen, and that's what always kind of appeals to me. I get people who make movies like
documentaries and stuff.
Or just movies that are family dramas and relationship things, and I get that stuff. Like and I think there's definitely a place for that, and I like to go see those movies. But also, there's movies that take place outside of reality, and that's the kind of stuff that just like appeals to me as like a filmmaker, and the stuff that said like that's what I want to do. Like I want to go into space.
If you're gonna play make believe, might as well
go all the way with it. And then to get back to the earlier stuff we were talking about like moral and ethical dilemmas and stuff like that, and I think that's what's great about science fiction too, is to be able to tell those stories in those worlds, because those worlds create kind of a window dressing that sort of distracts you from what you're talking about being like you're hitting the audience over the head with it, right? Like to have like Fit Passenger is a lifeboat story, right? But they're not. It's not real people in 2020 or 2021 actually in a lifeboat on water dealing with the actual real problems of today. They're in a lifeboat, and they're actually dealing with the real problems of today, but they're not referencing the real problems of today. They're it's all
Right,
disguised
right.
and dressed up differently, but it's still the same stuff, you know, and just in a different guise, you know.
So you've always known that film was what you wanted to do, like that's what it sounds like to me. Is that accurate? Like, as a kid watching those movies, you're like, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to make this stuff, and you followed through with that from then on, or did you?
No, I mean, you know, like I said, I got into acting because I felt like that's like
Sure,
I
sure.
wanted to.
It's still a part of that same
Yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to act in them, but you know, there was always that part of me, and then there was that part of me that you know, I went to school and I got good grades, and I was in the, you know, advanced placement courses and stuff like that, and
You were smart, great.
yeah, and like there was a kind of pressure to like do well in school and go to college and get a degree and get a job kind of thing. Not like my parents were foreboding, not not foreboding, that's the wrong word. Overbearing, you know. They were actually really supportive of me along the way, but it was like they were supportive of whatever outlets I wanted to do. They just wanted to make sure that I was like getting good grades and I should go to college, and because I'm like the first person in my family to like go to like a 4-year university and get a degree. Like
Yeah, same here.
yeah, so you know I come from like you know my dad worked at the Chevron oil refinery, and his dad was like a you know like a salesman, and you know like I come from that line of sort of thing. Not, you know, I don't have anybody in my family who's like academia, who's a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that, and so there was this sort of implicit pressure to kind of do that, you know, like, oh well, this is like, if you have the opportunity to do this,
for sure.
you should definitely do this, you know. And so I ended up going to university and getting a degree in history, and I was on my way to becoming a teacher. I went and I joined the Peace Corps and I taught English in the former Soviet Union, and I was out there during September 11th, and we were all brought back early because they were afraid of what could happen there to us, our safety and things like that, being there in the Middle East, and so that provided a sort of like an opportunity for me to kind of reassess my life and like what I was going to do, you know, and up to that point it was like, yeah, you know, I'd make films with my buddies on the side, like little video sketches just for fun and stuff like that.
You had
know,
your outlet still.
Yeah, that was it was just for fun. It was like a hobby, right? And because I didn't know anybody that worked in the film industry, I didn't know what that path looked like. You know, I didn't like, it's not like becoming a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, or a teacher. It's like, oh, you go to school, you get a degree, you go get your master's thing, you apply to this program, and then you get hired. Like that's not how the film industry works. There's no one path to get. Some people go to film school, some people don't go to film school. Some people's father's a famous director, and then that's how they end up getting into the industry. And then other people just show up in LA and walk on set and are a PA and work their way up. I mean, there's no one path, but there's also no kind of guideline like, oh, this is how you do it, right? And so without that, and with everything else, like all my other experiences were just sort of like people saying, oh well, you know, it's all who you know, and you know, just people who don't know anything about the industry, like telling me how hard it is to get into it and not knowing anything about it. It's like, okay, well, I guess that's not something that I get to do, right? That's something that other people get to do. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to become a teacher, or I'm going to, you know, do something like that, get an honorable profession or something. And yeah, and so, but then at some point I found myself in Southern California and was still kind of making films with my friends for fun. And I started to like, oh, I'll get a camera and we'll fool around. We'll make some films, do some of those like 40-hour film projects. And it was just all for fun. Like
Sure,
I had
sure.
jobs and I was doing, but like we're just doing it for fun, right? And then I started like, oh, yeah, like somebody asked me to come out and do a wedding. Oh, I'll shoot a wedding, or you help shoot this commercial, or edit this thing, or something like that. And it was like, oh, I started getting some sort of like legit experience doing stuff like tangential to the film industry, where I was like working with film gear and stuff like that, and using skills that I had kind of developed over like teaching myself, and got a job in post production, working at a company doing some like post production work. And then doing that, met other people that were working there that were like me, that wanted to get in the film industry and make their own films and stuff like that. And we started working together and making films, kind of getting a little more serious about stuff, submitting stuff to film festivals and things like that, you know. And then at some point it was just like, I was close to LA. I was living in Riverside there, and I was like, I'm just gonna move to LA. And like, I'm tired of like looking at this and finding excuses why I can't do it, you know, and like, yeah, I can go and I can become a teacher. I can get my master's in education, and I'll be 50 years old with tenure and a, you know, a retirement plan and everything like that, and look back at my life and say, what if, you know, what if I had given it a shot? Right? Like, I could live with it if I came out to LA and I gave it a shot and it didn't work out. I never met the right people. I was never good enough. I never got to make a film, or I make a film and it wasn't any good and then nothing happened after that. Like, I could live with that. I could live with giving it a shot and crashing and burning and failing. But I can't live with myself saying like, this is something that like a kind of passion that I felt in my life since I was a child, and I never even gave it a serious go, you know. And so there was that epiphany of that, of like, you know, I mean, I was 30 at least at the time, you know, by the time I moved to LA and decided like, I'm going to seriously give this thing a shot, you know. I was 2008, so yeah, it was like 30, 31, 32, something like that, you know. I said, I'm going to just do it. Like, it's not getting any younger. I've got this opportunity. I'm going to just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and then you know, was getting jobs in like post production. That was the easiest way for me to kind of get hit the ground, like working, and then kind of as I was kind of learning everything I could in the filmmaking process and being more familiar with cameras and things like that, started picking up the steadicam as something that I would do. Was, oh, I want steadicam in my own projects, and then friends come up to me and say, hey, well, I'm making this film. Bring your steadicam gear out and let's help me do my film. Okay, yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't getting paid for it. It was just I had the gears. We were all kind of acquiring gear to make our own stuff, and then yeah, how much would you charge to come out? And I was like, well, I don't know, like what $75, I don't know, whatever you got, like, because we're just all helping to make stuff, right? And then you know, I started getting hired here and there, you know, to do Steadicam stuff, and then that became a way for me to transition out of working in an office doing post production to being on set and working with people and getting new skills and just being on set, you know, and that just led down the road to so many opportunities being on set, you know, and when I started putting Fifth Passenger together too, it was the sort of thing. It was like, as I'm like approaching 40, you know, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna get this film done before I'm 40. Like I want to at least have made one film before I like depart this earth, right? That's I'm gonna make a film or die trying.
Yeah, similar
right?
similar to The Move. It was like a similar.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I came out here to make a film, so I'm gonna make a film, right? And you know, as I was like approaching 40, I was like, okay, I can get this done by the time I'm 40. Set this like deadline for myself, like this is get this thing done by the time I'm 40. You know, to like have it just arbitrary goal setting sort of stuff. You know, and did it. You know, so yeah, so that was that. That's, you know, more or less the journey and the philosophy, I guess, behind it, as far as like, yeah, it was always there, you know, but it wasn't a straight line. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I graduated high school and I went straight to LA and
Yeah.
went to film
Okay.
school or whatever. It was definitely a meandering path of self-discovery and coming to terms with like what I wanted out of life and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, I congrats on the
Thanks.
path, man.
Yeah.
I relate in multiple ways for sure with I don't even know when I talk to people about my path on film, I didn't know that I wanted to do it until like way late.
Yeah.
But I did the same college thing as you because of the parents and when I was like opportunity, go out and get it.
Yeah.
I got mine in mining engineering.
Oh, okay.
And then I didn't end up doing anything with it.
Wow,
and now we're here.
Yeah,
but
that is like I feel like history at least. Okay, there's this, writing and there's all this kind of mining and engineering. Wow,
the logistics though.
That's quite,
The logistics are great.
Okay.
Project management. And,
there you go. Okay.
And what's the other thing? There's a lot of work done in pre-production of a mine too, with like, is this feasible? Like, think of like all that kind of stuff. So, regardless, I got something out of it.
Digging for gold,
making the money, digging holes.
Yeah.
There was one last topic. I think we can close this out.
Okay.
Because I mean, there's plenty more we can talk about, but
yeah, it's getting long.
But this is. I'm referencing it in the beginning is one of my first experiences with you, aside from the Jurassic Gen short, was I sat with you maybe a couple times to help plan the crowdfunding. So just to get it out for people that are curious on the go-tos, the
like Kickstarter and stuff like that.
Yeah, like how to. I guess maybe you can drop some numbers on the numbers you were able to get, and that can kind of help. I was like, all right, I should listen to Scott because he was able to get this much money. For me, I think I pulled in $12,000 for my feature. You've pulled in more for yours because yours was sci-fi, and you've told me all about the process for that. But let's talk about the bullets on things to consider and the kind of stuff you normally bring up when you have coffee.
Yeah. I tell people don't do it. Yeah, that's the first thing I tell people. If you can find some other way to fund your film, do that. No, seriously. Like I've told it to you.
Great place to start.
If you have some other way that you can fund your film, do that.
Let's talk about that really quick. What other ways should people be looking first before considering this option from your perspective?
Yeah, you got a rich Uncle Steve who loves you. You know, you got your own money. You know, they always say don't use your own money, but sometimes you're doing your own project, use your own money. You know, as far as if you're starting out, there is very, very few options for you. You know,
and it depends on the amount you're looking to get too. If you're looking for millions, this is probably not the route for you.
Yeah, and your rich Uncle Steve may not be the route. You may unless you're a rich uncle that's an oil baron from Saudi Arabia or something like that. Crowdfunding is just like anything else. It's great and it's terrible in the same way. There's tremendous opportunities with crowdfunding, but it is incredibly hard. We raised for Fifth Passenger our initial campaign. We raised over $80,000, and you say, okay, well, how else could I have raised $80,000 for my film in a month? Like a month-long campaign. Spoiler alert: it was more than a month. It was years in the making to get to that point where within that 30-day window we could raise that money. We shot a proof of concept trailer. We grew a online social media fan base for the film. We went to Comic-Cons and comic book conventions and Star Trek conventions and passed out flyers and got like Star Trek actors attached to our project and did so much that what happened in that 1 month was just a formality in a sense. It's like whatever pre-production you would put into a film is the kind of pre-production that you need to put into your like crowdfunding campaign. So you're like, oh, I'm going to run a month-long crowdfunding campaign. So, well, what if I ran a month-long feature film production what kind of pre-production would I have to do in order to do that? It's like, well, that's about as much work as you need to put into your crowdfunding campaign, building your social media, and creating a plan. So there's tremendous opportunity to raise money, but it's also terribly difficult to do that, to raise large sums of money, to raise anything over, like what you did, $12,000, $15,000, $20,000. Like if you don't have any big name actors, if you don't have a large social media fan base, if you don't have access to a lot of people with money, and you've got a small social circle, or an average, that's about the kind of limits that I would say most people can expect to raise is somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000, regardless of what your project is, right? And if you want to try to raise something substantially more than that, getting into $50,000 to $100,000 range, like what we did with Fit Passenger, you're going to have to really expand outside of your circle and reach a larger audience. And for us, how we did that was going to the Star Trek fan base, because we had a project that was science fiction that fit into the Star Trek world. It wasn't a Star Trek film, but it was in that genre and was accessible to the Star Trek audience. And through personal connections, was able to get Star Trek actors onto the project. That was an easy sell for that audience, and that we could market the campaign and the film to those people and really just hone in on that. We also benefited from a series of Star Trek fan films that were made. Star Trek Renegades, Axanar, Star Trek Continues. And they all use that same model. They got existing Star Trek actors, or actors that had been in previous Star Trek films and shows, to reprise their roles that they created these fan stories for. And we were able to, I know like Ryan Husk and some other people were involved in those projects, and I got them involved in Fifth Passenger, and so we were able to kind of ride that wave and that audience, and those people who saw those films get funding and get made knew that we were kind of we kind of became part of that extended family, right? And so we were able to raise money off of that, people's confidence that, well, some of the people that are involved in these Star Trek fan films are also involved in this Fifth Passenger project that looks like it's going to have the same kind of quality and the same people involved, and so we can trust them, so we're going to trust them with our money and give towards that. And that's a big thing with the crowdfunding campaign, is when you're looking for like smaller amounts of money, and you're like, I'm putting this out to my extended friends and family network and people that I know on Facebook and things like that. The level, like the threshold of trust that you have to overcome is fairly small. My Uncle Steve, who is willing to give me $1,000 towards my film. He's my uncle. He's known me since I was a kid. He trusts me. He believes in me, and he's going to give me the money because I'm his nephew, and that's all it takes, right? And if he loses his money, he's helping his nephew out do a thing. But if it's some dude who lives in Tuscaloosa, doesn't know you from anybody else, like what is it going to take to convince that person to give you even $20, right? Like they need to you need to show them something that says, oh, okay, this is worth my $20. Like no one's gonna walk up to a movie theater and they say, okay, well, give us $20 and we're going to spin the wheel, and the wheel might land on a spot where you get to watch the movie, and the wheel might land on a spot where you don't get to watch the movie. And if it lands on the spot, then we just take your $20 and you go home. Like who's gonna go and like give $20 to a movie theater to spin a wheel and only have a 50% chance to watch the movie, right? So but that's essentially what you're asking people to do, is to spend $20 to spin the wheel, and maybe they're going to get to see the movie that you made, and maybe they're not.
Yeah, because we talked about already how difficult it is to get anything done in this town anywhere. Just to see a project through when all the intent is behind it. So
so part of that is presentation. Like I said, we made a proof of concept trailer for Fifth Passenger, and I can't stress enough how important that was, and how integral that was into us being successful in several stages of the project. One was using that as a tool to grow our social media campaign and get people just on board with, like, even before we ran, or even though before we knew we were going to do a Kickstarter project, we made the proof of concept trailer just because we were trying to get money the old-fashioned way for the film, and it was a way to just be like, hey, this is what we want to do, this is what the project looks like, this is our technical capabilities, this is the kind of production value we expect to bring to the project. And so to be able to have something like that you can show people, again, that don't know you and have no emotional investment in you, to trust you with their money, whether it's $20 or it's $1,000 or it's $500,000 because it's a studio or something like that. Like, how are you going to convince somebody? And I think that's the biggest and, like, kind of most important thing to do. Is not just getting people excited about what the project is, because you can present this project that's going to be the best film in the world and everybody wants to see this film, but if they don't have confidence that you can actually pull this thing off, they're not going to entrust you with their time and their money. And part of that is, like, the presentation of the project, the video. It's like, this is my pitch video. It looks professional, and, like, if you can't use a camera and lights and proper sound gear to shoot your video that asks people for money, they're not going to trust that you can use camera and lights and sound gear in order to actually make the film, right? And so there's an aspect of that, something with the sort of credibility that you get with, like, us bringing in the Star Trek actors. So they say, oh, we had Tim Russ and Marina Sirtis and people like that on board our project. And people say, well, Tim Russ is on it. It must be legitimate, and it must be good, because Tim Russ wouldn't do something if he didn't think it was good, right?
If he didn't believe in you,
and if it wasn't up to standards, and look, they got this person, they got this person, they got this person. So there's those sorts of things, and it's tough and it's stressful, and it's so many ins and outs, and so that's why I have those conversations with people, because it's more than I could say in 5 minutes. It's I could talk, if I could give a whole sermon on crowdfunding, and but it's difficult and it's stressful, but it is a way for people to raise more money than they could. You just have to go in with the right expectations, and kind of know what you want to achieve and what's possible, and you can't just go in and be like, hey, I shot something with an iPhone with my buddy, and we're going to throw it up on Facebook and expect to raise $100,000, because that's just not realistic, But it is, like, I'm super grateful that it was there and it was an option, and that people in the Star Trek community trusted us with everything to make the film happen, and to give us their money and everything like that. Because at the point where we were at, I don't know how else we would have made the film. That was like Plan C for us. We were like, okay, let's try to all these different ways of trying to get money to make the film, and then at the end of the day, we were just like, we had the opportunity to shoot on the Space Command sets, and I approached Morgan and I said, we've got this opportunity to shoot there. We can raise some money on Kickstarter. I don't think we're going to be able to raise all the money that we need in order to complete the film, from production to post-production and delivery and everything like that. But what if we could raise even $50,000 and we could shoot half of the film on the existing sets? We could shoot for 2 or 3 weeks and just get like half of the film shot. And then we've got half the film shot, and then we got something that we can try to raise some more money off of. Because as it sits right now, we got no money and we got no film, right? So, but if we go to Kickstarter and we raise some money, we spend that money and get a little bit of our film done. Now we may not have any more money left, but at least we got some of the film done, and we can try to raise some more money off of that, and at least we've got something, because we'd been, 2 or 3 years we've been going around town trying to raise money for the film, and that was just sort of like, it's now or never, because the Space Command sets were going to be torn down, and they were going to close up the studio, and he was going to pack them all up, and they were going to go away, and it was like, this is a now or never, once in a lifetime opportunity to have these sets that we have access to. Again, it's just like, I just got to give it a shot, And it was hairy though, because Kickstarter is a sort of all or nothing goal. Like you set a goal and you say, this is how much money we're going to raise, and if you don't raise that money, we set our goal at $65,000, and if we had raised $64,999, we wouldn't gotten a penny of it. We didn't hit that $65,000 until like 2 or 3 days before the goal was finished, and it was, I was standing on a ledge, like emotionally, psychologically, I was standing on a ledge, if this doesn't succeed, what am I doing?
Yeah, who am I?
Yeah. I mean, like,
why am I here?
Yeah. I mean, I not only do I not have the money to make the film, I've kind of not say like public humiliation, because I didn't feel like humiliated because we gave it a shot and we got close or whatever. But there's also sort of thing like, this is sort of like a test case, like, is there an audience for my movie, right? And if you put your film out there in like a Kickstarter campaign and you can't raise the money that you're going for, you've kind of said, well, I guess there's no audience for my movie, and that was something that I was like not willing to accept.
There's that bad feeling you get of people don't want what I have to offer.
Yeah, and so that was, it was a humbling experience to see that
humbling's a good word.
to see that there was an audience for the film.
Yeah, because I think we talked about it before. So you hit it like 3 or 2 days before, and then there was like a big landslide of snow ready to drop.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's a bad metaphor, but regardless,
metaphor. Poetic.
Like you're kind of saying, a lot of people kind of wait until it happens, and you had a big influx at the very end, which is really cool.
Yeah. That comes to the whole psychology of stuff, and that's why I talk at length about when I meet with people and talk to them about crowdfunding, is the sort of psychology of success and things like that. Is like, why do like successful real estate agents drive a BMW and come up with a nice suit, right? It's because, this person's successful, right? That psychology of that, right? And so, that comes along with the crowdfunding campaign of like the inevitability of success, of like starting off really strong, raising a lot of money right away to put you on that trajectory that says, we've got a month to go, but look, we've raised 20% in the first couple days.
Right.
This thing is going to be successful. Get on board, because this thing's going to get made. And because people don't want to go through all the trouble. Like I said, the box office analogy of spinning the wheel. Like they don't want to give you $20 to spin the wheel and maybe see a movie, maybe not see a movie. They don't want to go through the time of clicking onto the Kickstarter campaign and logging in and choosing a perk and giving their credit card number and doing all that. They don't want to do all that if the film's not going to be successful. Like, why am I doing that? I'm wasting my time.
You mean if the campaign's going to be successful?
Right. If the campaign's going to be successful. If they don't think it's going to reach its goal and you're going to get the money, why click on all the things and put in your information and log in and all that kind of stuff, right? So... people are kind of sitting back and waiting to see that the thing is going to happen, and people want to be a part of a winner campaign, a winning thing. People like, if your campaign is not doing well, you're going to have a couple people that feel sorry for you or are going to kind of donate to your campaign because they want you to succeed. But that little percentage of the population is down here really small, where you have the larger percentage of people that want to be part of something that is going to win, that is going to happen, that's going to be successful. And so when we hit our goal of 65,000 with a couple days left to go in the campaign, and then we ended up hitting over $81,000 at the end of the day. So we got $16,000 in like 2 days. Like there was no other 2-day period where we made that much money. Why did that happen after we hit our goal? Yes, because oh my God, they reached their goal, they're successful. Okay, yeah, now I'll get, because I want to be a part of this, because I want to get the DVD or the T-shirt or whatever the thing is. Now that I know the campaign's going to be successful, so
people like certainty.
Yeah, for sure, and yeah. So that's definitely something I always tell people, like, figure out what your goal is in your mind, how much money you want to make, and then set your Kickstarter goal a lot lower than what that actual goal is, because you're gonna you want to set your goal at something you know that you can hit, and that takes a lot of number crunching, and every project's different, and that's something that I always kind of work with people on. That is, but there's a number of, like, oh, this is how much I'd love to have, this is how much is the bare minimum I need in order to make my project happen. And then this is the number that I'm going to set my actual Kickstarter goal at, so that I can hit that and say, look, we're successful. And then you're going to have people that are going to push you up to that number that you want to be at, so. Yep.
I think that's a great abridged version of a 2-hour coffee lunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's I think we're good.
Yeah.
Last things I like to ask are, for people that want to keep up with Scott Baker and see what projects are coming out and what you're up to and stay in the loop, where can they find you?
I live at 7235 Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you which apartment number, but that's, yeah. Instagram is at Mr. Scotty Baker. That's also Twitter.
You don't tweet?
Twitter very often.
I don't do it either.
Yeah, I used to. It's just not a platform for me that I much enjoy. I'm on the Facebook.
Website. Where can they find the movie?
I mean, you search for Fifth Passenger, like 5th Passenger, and it's on Amazon Prime. It's actually on like YouTube. Our distributor put it up there on YouTube, like it's what they call like a AVOD now, which is advertising video on demand. So you watch the movie and little ads pop up, and that's how it's monetized now. Is instead of you paying for the film, you're paying for the film by watching advertisements. So so you can watch it on YouTube, or you can watch it on Tubi, I think is another thing. But Amazon Prime, it's there as well for free with advertisements. You have to have Amazon Prime. You can just watch it for free on Amazon. And you can go to fifthpassenger.com. There's information there if you want a DVD or a Blu-ray. And my personal website is steadicam.la. And that's for like my Steadicam stuff that I put up there. Steadicam cinematography, photography kind of stuff is there. That's me. That's where I'm at. Instagram is where I'm most active, like social media. So, I post pictures of my camera and my Steadicam when I'm on set, and every once in a while I'll post a picture of myself, and talk about stuff I'm doing. But
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that you got some stuff picking up, and you're doing some cool things. And 2021 is I mean, I think we all have hopes that it's gonna, stuff is gonna get back. We're gonna get back at it. So I'm excited myself to see when that starts happening for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm excited about about Flicker, the horror film that I'm working right now, and obviously when I have information as far as like how that's going to get released as part of that anthology, I'll definitely like blast that on social media and stuff like that. But yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks again for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Bum, 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 bum.